Chapter 1493. The little bear pounced on Zhou, but he didn't dare move. He spread his arms, not daring to touch the little bear. Zhou was afraid that if he reached out to touch the little bear, the giant bear might misunderstand that he wanted to hurt it. That would definitely result in a tragic outcome. However, the little bear didn't seem to know anything as it rubbed against Zhou, as though it wanted to play with him. Zhou looked at the giant bear, unsure if he should move. The giant bear moved its claws and slapped the horn on the ground to Zhou's side. What's the meaning of this? Is it for me? Zhou was slightly taken aback. He felt that it was the case, but he couldn't believe it. The giant bear definitely knew that he had transformed into a little bear. It was already kind of him not to smack him to death. It even gave him something left behind by the golden shilling. No matter how he thought about it, it didn't seem possible. The giant bear glanced at him before standing up. Zhou jumped in fright and had the urge to turn around and escape. However, he couldn't escape from the Grand Supreme Elder platform. After the giant bear stood up, it moved its gaze away from Zhou and looked up at the sky as though it was looking at the cosmos. However, it was daytime and there was a huge sun. How could he see any stars? However, the giant bear kept looking up. Zhou couldn't help but look up as well. After taking a look, he immediately widened his mouth in shock. In the sky, where the blazing sun was high up in the sky, stars appeared one after another. The light from the stars was as clear as day, and it was getting brighter and brighter. What's going on? Zhou looked at the stars in the sky before looking at the giant bear. Without a doubt, the stars that appeared in the day were definitely related to the giant bear. This was because Zhou had already seen starlight land on its body. In broad daylight, starlight shone on the giant bear like searchlights. Even an idiot knew that this matter was definitely related to the giant bear. In fact, it wasn't just Zhou. Many people in the Federation had seen the phenomenon of stars appearing in broad daylight, but they didn't know the reason. The various factions were paying attention to this strange phenomenon, and the media was also reporting this phenomenon. Although Zhou didn't know what was happening outside, he could imagine that the Federation was definitely in chaos with such a strange phenomenon appearing. However, Zhou didn't know that this was only the beginning. The outside world was more chaotic than he imagined, because the Rubik's Cubes scattered all over the world lit up at the same time. After the last battle of Venus, the magic cube hadn't moved at all. Now that it had reopened, the images on the magic cube were impressively those stars that had appeared during the day. The Rubik's Cube has opened again. I wonder if it's a blessing or a curse. Zhang Chunqiu sighed softly. To him, too many things had happened recently. In leading the Zhang family forward in such a complicated situation, Zhang Chunqiu had always been treading on thin ice. He was afraid that if he wasn't careful, the Zhang family would slide into a bottomless abyss. Is it starting again? Which star's companion beast will appear this time? Xia Luchuan was eager to give it a try. Ever since Xia Jiuhuang's death, the Xia family had been developing in a low profile and constantly strengthening itself. Now, they had recovered a lot of their strength, but if they wanted to return to the era when the Xia family was at its most recovered, they still needed more resources and hard work. And the Battle of the Magic Cube was undoubtedly the fastest way to obtain top resources. Strange, why are there so many stars shining? Which star's companion beast has appeared? Dugagul muttered to himself as he looked at the scene. In fact, it wasn't just Dugagul. Everyone who was watching the Rubik's Cube found it odd. This was because only Venus had appeared in the Rubik's Cube during the last Battle of Venus. Now, there were more than 10 stars that had appeared during the day. The scenes appeared on the Rubik's Cube as they guessed what was going on. Even the holy deity in the Holy Land was looking at the stars in the sky with a frown. Zhou watched as the starlight on the giant bear's body intensified, as though it was about to ascend with the starlight. He couldn't help but feel surprised. What's going on? Could it be that the giant bear isn't a dimensional creature on Earth, but from the universe? That wasn't right either. Earth had its own laws of self-protection, not to mention the creatures in the universe. Even the creatures on Earth would be greatly restricted. For example, Tsukuyami has no choice but to leave Earth. This giant bear's level should be higher than Tsukuyami's. If it isn't an Earth creature, How can it not be restricted when it comes to Earth? Many thoughts flashed through Zhou Wen's mind, but he still couldn't figure out what was going on. If the giant bear was an Earth creature, why could it stir the stars in the universe? Furthermore, it wasn't just one. So many stars seemed to resonate with it. As Zhou Wen pondered, Little Bear seemed to realize something and pounced forward to throw itself into the giant bear's embrace. However, the starlight isolated it outside like an invisible barrier, preventing it from approaching the giant bear. The giant bear looked at Little Bear with a gentle look in its eyes. There were also some emotions that Zhou Wen couldn't understand. Woo! Woo! Little Bear cried out as it tried to rush into the starlight. Its claws scratched at the starlight, but it couldn't rush in. The giant bear didn't stop Little Bear, nor did it do anything. All it did was look at it lovingly. As the starlight intensified, the giant bear's body was stirred by the starlight and gradually floated up. The giant bear is going to be forced to leave Earth? Zhou Wen was pleasantly surprised. If the giant bear left just like that, he would be completely safe. However, on second thought, he felt that something was amiss. If the giant bear left Earth, why didn't it take Little Bear with it? With its powerful strength, it shouldn't be difficult for it to take Little Bear with it. Now that Little Bear was isolated from the starlight, the giant bear wasn't surprised at all. Clearly, it had expected it. The giant bear's body rose higher and higher as Little Bear jumped and scratched anxiously. It wanted to approach the giant bear, but it was blocked by the starlight, unable to approach at all. The giant bear had already risen above the Grand Supreme Elder platform. It suddenly retracted its gaze and looked at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen's heart subconsciously raced when he was stared at. Although the gaze wasn't fierce, it made Zhou Wen feel an inexplicable pressure. Woo! Woo! Little Bear jumped up and slammed into the starlight, but it was stopped by the Grand Supreme Elder platform's strength. After falling, it fell to the ground. The giant bear's body had already exceeded the Grand Supreme Elder platform's range. The speed at which it rose into the sky increased. Before Zhou Wen could figure out what the giant bear was looking at him with, the giant bear's body had already risen into the sky like a meteor. In the blink of an eye, it shot into the universe and vanished. Those shining stars also gradually dimmed as the giant bear ascended into the universe. The spectacle of the stars in the daytime also disappeared. Only the little bear was still whimpering at the sky. Although the phenomenon of stars in daytime vanished, the Rubik's Cube didn't stop. There were still images changing. Chapter 1494. Finally, the Rubik's Cube scene froze on a strange planet. The planet emitted a strange glow. It was orange-red in color, and there seemed to be a dazzling, colorful light swirling within it. As the light was too intense, it was impossible to see what was inside. The Rubik's Cube scene remained fixed there without any changes, nor did it close. There was a flurry of discussion. Some factions even began to study the planet that appeared on the Rubik's Cube. Zhou Wen looked up into the sky and couldn't see the giant bear at all. There was only a blue sky in broad daylight. The little bear's eyes were brimming with tears as it constantly whimpered at the sky. Seeing Zhou Wen look at it, the little bear pounced over and burrowed its head into Zhou Wen's arms, whimpering as it hugged him. What's going on? Zhou Wen still hadn't snapped out of his daze. From the looks of it, the giant bear wanted him to adopt the little bear. However, Zhou Wen didn't understand why the giant bear thought that he would adopt the little bear and not kill it. After all, the giant bear had already left Earth and couldn't return. Even if he killed the little bear, the giant bear couldn't do anything to him. However, looking at the crying little bear, Zhou Wen really couldn't bring himself to do it. Could it be that the giant bear's intelligence has reached such a level that it can tell that I can't bear to kill the little bear? Zhou Wen patted the little bear's head, still feeling that something was amiss, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Thankfully, the little bear was easy to coax. After a while, it stopped crying. I have to leave this place. Do you want to follow me? Zhou Wen asked the little bear. The little bear looked at him in puzzlement. Clearly, with its intelligence, it couldn't understand what Zhou Wen was saying. Zhou Wen spoke and gestured for quite a while, but he failed to get the little bear to understand him. However, When Joan walked out, the little bear followed him. This fellow is so stupid. If I leave it here, it probably won't survive. Forget it, I'll bring it back. Joan put away the golden horn and left the Grand Supreme platform with the little bear. When he walked into the 33rd step, Joan immediately felt that it was different from when he came. With a step, the world changed as though he had stepped into a void. He felt his body rapidly plummet, and he had no idea where he would fall. Strangely, the little bear didn't fall into the void with Joan. He didn't even see its shadow. With a thought, Joan circulated the Tao Sutra and engraved the heaven-opening scripture. In the next second, Joan realized that he was still standing on the steps. There was no void at all, nor was he falling. Furthermore, the bear was beside him. Joan led Little Bear down. With the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, the 33 Tao steps were useless against him. Little Bear didn't seem to be restricted by the Tao steps either. It followed beside Joan and kept leaning its head against him. After leaving the Grand Supreme Elder platform, Joan circled Tao Enlightenment Palace. There were quite a number of dimensional creatures here, but none of them attacked humans. Clearly, they were affected by the nomological powers of Tao Enlightenment Palace. They weren't as fearless as the Golden Qilin and the Giant Bear. The Giant Bear has left, and the Golden Qilin is dead. This place can be considered as a place to build a human city. However, killing is not allowed in the Grand Supreme Elder platform, and food will be a problem in the future. Furthermore, any creature can enter and exit the Grand Supreme Elder platform at will. If creatures like the Giant Bear appear again, it will be a huge problem. After some consideration, Joan felt that the Grand Supreme Elder platform could be used as a temporary shelter. However, it didn't seem like a good choice to build a human city and let humans live there for a long time. Furthermore, Joan had a vague feeling that his Tao Sutra might be able to advance to the Calamity Grade by relying on the Grand Supreme Elder platform. If the Grand Supreme Elder platform was destroyed, wouldn't it be very dangerous to build a human city here? However, Joan didn't find anything on the Grand Supreme Elder platform that could advance his Tao Sutra to the Calamity Grade. All he could do was return to take a look at the situation. The little bear followed Joan closely. It would panic the moment it couldn't see Joan. From the looks of it, the Giant Bear's departure had left a huge psychological trauma on it. Don't be afraid. You will have many friends soon. Joan stroked the little bear's head and returned to Guide City with it. Guide City was in a pretty good situation. In the few days that Joan was at the Grand Supreme Elder platform, there had been a few large-scale skeleton legions appearing. Bai was originally very worried, but to his surprise, when the chick spat out a mouthful of flames, the skeleton army was like withered wood. It spread like wildfire, spreading like wildfire. The skeleton army couldn't withstand a single blow from the chick, leaving Bai pleasantly surprised. It was also because of the chick's display of might that the hesitant people quickly gathered at the school. Many people had even signed the agreement, willing to become a part of the new city. Joan, this bird of yours is just too amazing. Now, everyone outside is treating it as a divine bird, saying that it's the legendary mystic bird. Bai excitedly recounted the chick's display of might and how much it was revered by people. Joan was at a loss whether to laugh or cry when he heard that. The mystic bird was indeed a divine bird of Shang, but from the word mystic, it should be a black bird. The chick was a phoenix species, and its body was already a pale gold color. It was impossible for it to be a mystic bird. However, the chick was very smug. When Bai recounted its heroic deeds, its chin was almost raised to the sky, looking as though it couldn't be looked at. What's this? Only then did Bai see the little bear behind Joan. The little bear was actually very timid. It kept hiding behind Joan, occasionally peeking out half its head to peek at Bai and the chick. The reason Bai asked this was because the little bear really didn't look like a bear. Its size was different from a gigantic bear, closer to a four-legged beast like a lion or tiger. This is a pet I adopted. It has a rather wild personality and isn't as obedient as the chick. Don't approach it, Joan exhorted Bai. Bai nodded and asked, How's the situation at Mount Laojun? That dimensional creature has been resolved, but I don't think Mount Laojun is suitable for building a human city. Although it's relatively safe there for the time being, we can't kill. This means that we need to obtain food from the outside world. Furthermore, any creature can freely enter and exit Dao Illumination Palace. This is very disadvantageous for us, Zhouwen said. Yu Qiubai sighed and said, I also know that it's not suitable, but now, so many people are eagerly waiting for us. They need a stable home. With the chick guarding this place, there shouldn't be any problems for the time being. We still have time. Think about it, and see if there are any other suitable dimensional zones. Zhouwen still felt that he shouldn't choose Mount Laojun and Dao Illumination Palace for temporary stability. Let me think about it. Yu Qiubai paused and suddenly said, By the way, do you know about the reopening of the Rubik's Cube? There's a Rubik's Cube here? Zhouwen was somewhat surprised. Chapter 1495. There were many places where the Rubik's Cube appeared. Most of them were places where a large number of humans gathered. There were also some ancient cities or dimensional zones. It was possible for the Rubik's Cube to appear. Zhouwen wouldn't be surprised if Guide Ancient City had a Rubik's Cube, but Guide City's population was constantly declining. It surprised Zhou that the Rubik's Cube would appear outside a dimensional zone. We found it strange in the past. I've also read reports regarding the Rubik's Cube. The Rubik's Cube in other cities appears in the middle of cities where humans gather. However, the Rubik's Cube in our guide city appeared in the suburbs. There weren't many people there, nor were there any dimensional zones. Now, there are even fewer people there. I wonder why the Rubik's Cube would appear there, Yu Qiubai said. Where's the Rubik's Cube? Zhouwen felt that the location where the Rubik's Cube appeared definitely wasn't without reason. Perhaps there was something there that hadn't been discovered. Yu Qiubai took out a map and pointed out the location to Zhouwen. The place wasn't far from the ancient city. In the past, it was in the suburbs of Guide City. It was originally a place where crops were planted. Wheat had once been planted on a large scale, but it had long been abandoned. There were weeds everywhere that were about a person's height. There weren't any dimensional zones here either. It looked like a wasteland. In the weeds, a huge Rubik's Cube sat there. From afar, he could see the Rubik's Cube screen lit up. On it was the shimmering orange-red planet. This should be a star, right? Zhouwen looked at it for a while and could roughly confirm that it was a celestial body like the sun, not a planet like Earth. Stars emitted large amounts of light and heat, making it almost impossible for creatures to survive on them. Just like the sun, its surface temperature could reach 5,500 degrees Celsius. The temperature inside was unimaginably high. Even calamity-grade creatures might not be able to withstand the high temperatures inside. If the dimensional zone is on that planet, the difficulty of this dimensional zone will probably be much higher than Venus. Zhouwen was roughly certain that it wasn't the sun. He heaved a sigh of relief. If it wasn't a planet in the solar system, the impact on Earth would likely be much smaller. The scene on the Rubik's Cube didn't move at all. There was nothing much to see. Zhouwen circled the Rubik's Cube and used Truth Listener to scan the nearby area, hoping to figure out what was different about this place. Strange. There really aren't any special essence energy fluctuations here, nor are there any dimensional zones. However, this isn't a place where humans gather. Why would the magic cube land here? Zhouwen plucked some weeds and carefully observed them. Although the weeds here were affected by the environment and had undergone some mutations, they were within the normal range. They hadn't evolved into dimensional creatures. Such a mutation could be found all over the world. There was nothing special about it. There must be a reason why the magic cube appeared here. Unfortunately, the earth elemental beast has already been killed by a sword immortal perfection. Otherwise, it might discover something if it ventured deep underground. Zhouwen was somewhat depressed as he summoned Tyrant Behemoth. It was also good at digging. After Tyrant Behemoth came out, it accepted Zhouwen's orders and lowered its head to burrow into the ground. The strange horn on its head spun like a drill bit as it drilled a huge hole in the soil that was connected to the weeds. Tyrant Behemoth drilled a few hundred meters underground, but it didn't discover an underground dimensional zone. Just as Zhouwen was feeling disappointed, he saw the tiny bear run to a patch of weeds near the Rubik's Cube. It raised its butt and used its front claws to dig for something. Joan walked over curiously and saw the little bear's front claws quickly dig at the soil. Soon it dug out a huge hole. What's that? Joan realized that the little bear had really dug out something. He couldn't tell what it was. It looked like an earthen yellow substance with some fine patterns on it. It wasn't gold or jade, nor did it look like a stone. The little bear's actions became very gentle as it used its claws to remove the soil on it, allowing the item to gradually appear. This is a beehive. Joan finally saw what it was. It was a lotus-like beehive with a diameter of more than 50 centimeters. The little bear used its claws to tear open the beehive, and honey flowed out. The little bear licked the honey with its mouth. After sucking quite a bit of it, it gestured for Joe when to eat the honey with it. Joan used his finger to dip it in and placed it in his mouth to taste it. It was really sweet honey. It wasn't fake at all. Strange. Such a beehive should be on a tree. An earth and wasp beehive isn't like this. Why is this beehive underground? Joan called Tyrant Behemoth over and got it to continue digging the hole the little bear had dug. Not long after the little bear dug, it made another discovery. However, this time, it wasn't a beehive but some rotten bronze. This was because many of them had rotted. From the remnant parts, it was likely something similar to a cauldron. As Tyrant Behemoth was too strong, it damaged many of the bronze items while digging, making it even more difficult for Joan to identify them. Therefore, Joan stopped getting it to dig and used his hands to do so. Soon, Joan dug out some gray pottery and some jade-like ornaments. Although Joan didn't know what the ornaments were for, the quality of the jade told him that they were of poor quality. They weren't anything good. These things look like antiques, but antiques don't have much value in this era, Wang Yao said. Joan's knowledge of history was limited, so he didn't know what era these things were from. He roughly guessed that they were from the Shang and Zhou dynasties. Joan continued digging and dug out some strange items. Among them, there were mainly gray pottery and bronze. Although there were other items, they had probably rotted away due to the passage of time. As he dug, Joan's eyes suddenly lit up. A hard object appeared under his finger. It looked like jade, but on careful look, he realized that it was actually bone. What kind of bones are these? Joan slowly plucked away the soil on the bones and soon realized that the bones were connected. They weren't like ordinary bones. As the flesh and blood rotted, the bones would separate. The bones below were connected, but the flesh and blood were long gone. For some reason, the joints of the bones didn't separate. They were still firmly glued together. When Joan dug out the entire skeleton, he realized that it was the skeleton of a giant bird. Furthermore, it was very complete without any missing bones. Chapter 1496. The skeleton was already in a half-fossilized state. Some places still maintained the luster of bones, crystalline like jade, but some places were as dim as fossils. There were also many potholes. Just from a skeleton, the bird was probably 4 to 5 meters tall when it stood up. There was no bird creature of such size in history. Was there such a huge bird in that era? Joan suspected if this was the legendary mystic bird. After all, no one had seen such a huge bird in that era. It was normal to treat such a huge bird as a divine bird. Unfortunately, there were only bones left. There were no feathers, so it was unknown if its feathers were black. He didn't discover any essence energy fluctuations on the bird bones. It seemed to be an ordinary skeleton, so Joan placed it to the side and continued digging. He dug out some gray pottery fragments and even found some stone tools. They looked like knives and axes, and they were extremely crude. If he had seen these stone tools by the side of the road, Joan would definitely have thought that they were ordinary, strange-shaped stones. Joan dug through all the nearby areas. Apart from the ancient junk, only the bird skeleton was of some interest. He was somewhat disappointed that he didn't find any dimensional zones or mysterious items. Turning back, Joan wanted to sort out the junk he had dug up and store it in the chaos space. Although the junk was useless to him, it was very likely an irreplaceable treasure to a historian. Joan planned on putting it away. When Earth became truly peaceful in the future, these things might become priceless treasures. Eh. Zhou came in front of the pile of junk and couldn't help but frown after looking at it for a while. He had dug up quite a number of things, piling them up like a small mountain. However, Zhou could clearly sense that the pile of junk was much smaller than before. In order to confirm that he hadn't remembered wrongly, Zhou went through the junk one by one and placed it to the other side. There's indeed a lot less. The bronze that looks like a carrot is gone. There are also many gray pottery and utensils. They're all gone. As many of the utensils looked strange, Zhou didn't know what they were, so they left a deep impression. Now, he couldn't find them no matter how hard he searched. He looked around, but he didn't find any traces of dimensional creatures or humans. Zhou used Great Brahma to observe the particles in the air, but he didn't discover any traces of other living beings. What the hell? Did those things grow legs and run away? Zhou combed through it again to confirm that he hadn't remembered wrongly. As a result, when he counted, he realized that there were even fewer items than before. The few items that he had just taken were now gone. What the hell? Zhou looked around warily, thinking that some terrifying existence had snuck over. However, after waiting for a while, there was no movement. Truth Listener didn't discover any clues. If that thing can really prevent me from sensing it at such a close distance, and can even secretly take it away, he could have just plucked my head off. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Zhou thought carefully and felt that something was amiss. He decided to count again. This time, something was missing again. Zhou hadn't even noticed that so many things had disappeared right under his nose. Zhou summoned his companion beasts and got them to guard his surroundings while he paid close attention to the pile of trash. The little bear had been licking the bee by the side. It had just finished eating and crawled back to Zhou side, looking curiously at the trash on the ground. After waiting for a while, there was no movement. Even the soul reflection mirror and the two golden WIRMs didn't react. Zhou kept staring at the pile of trash, but he didn't discover anything missing. After a period of time, Zhou didn't discover anything. It didn't seem like anything was missing, so he counted the trash again. However, he realized that a few more items were missing. Holy *T, what the hell? How'd it go missing? Zhou was dumbfounded. He searched the ground, but he didn't discover anything. With a thought, Zhou summoned a large group of musical note sprites. Under Zhou's orders, the musical note sprites attached themselves to the pieces of trash. Every piece of bronze, every piece of gray pottery, and even the fragments had a musical note sprite attached to them. Zhou insisted on figuring out how those things had vanished. Zhou widened his eyes as he stared intently at the pile of items. At the same time, he used his connection with the musical note sprites to monitor all the trash. Suddenly, Zhou felt one of the musical note sprites vanish. Before he could take a closer look at what the vanished musical note sprite belonged to, he lost contact with a few more musical note sprites. He couldn't sense them no matter how hard he tried. Zhou hurriedly ordered the remaining musical note sprites to fly up with the items they were attached to. Then, he searched for the few musical note sprites that he couldn't contact. He didn't find the missing musical note sprites, but he realized that the other items had been flown up by the musical note sprites. Only the skeleton of the giant bird remained on the ground. Could it be that the missing items have something to do with it? Zhou carefully sized up the skeleton and realized that the musical note sprites that were attached to it had vanished. It wasn't a problem for the musical note sprites to disappear, but the few musical note sprites that had disappeared at the same time had also vanished. Only the skeleton had the musical note sprites that had attached themselves to it, but it was still here. Zhou summoned another musical note sprite and made it attach itself to the giant bird skeleton. Then, Zhou kept staring at it. After a while, something strange happened. The musical note sprite on the giant bird's skeleton vanished into thin air without any warning, nor did there be any spatial fluctuations. How can this be? Zhou widened his eyes, almost unable to believe what he had seen. Now that he thought about it carefully, it seemed that the items that had previously disappeared were all near the giant bird skeleton. Zhou placed a few pieces of bronze and gray pottery on the giant bird skeleton. After a while, the fragments magically vanished. Zhou watched them disappear, but he still didn't know what kind of power had made them disappear. It was as though they had vanished into thin air. There seems to be something wrong with this giant bird skeleton. Zhou carefully sized up the giant bird skeleton, but he didn't discover anything different about it. However, after what had happened, Zhou naturally didn't believe that it was just an ordinary bird skeleton. Chapter 1497. Zhou experimented a few more times and was certain that anything that came into contact with the giant bird skeleton for a period of time would vanish into thin air. Strangely, Zhou didn't sense any spatial fluctuations. Zhou could understand if it was the power of spatial teleportation, but it was somewhat strange for items to vanish without any spatial fluctuations. Zhou still hadn't figured out where the missing items had gone. If they had disintegrated, there should have been some matter left after the disintegration, but Zhou didn't even see the particles after the disintegration. If it was teleportation, the companion beasts would have lost contact with Zhou after they disappeared. Zhou wasn't sure what had happened to them, so he naturally didn't know where they had been teleported to. Since he couldn't figure it out, Zhou had no choice but to bury the giant bird skeleton again. He didn't dare put it directly into the chaos space. If the chaos bead was gone, it would be a huge loss. Strangely enough, anything that touched the giant bird skeleton would vanish, but the soil here wouldn't vanish. Zhou got some soil from elsewhere and placed it on the giant bird skeleton. After a while, it vanished. This place really isn't an ordinary place. Zhou dug up some nearby areas and discovered quite a number of gray pottery and bronze items. However, they were only ordinary antiques without any practical value. The various factions were studying the planet that had recently appeared on the Rubik's Cube. Some factions had already attempted to send people over, but they were all death warriors or death row prisoners. They wanted to figure out what kind of dimensional zone was on the planet. Strangely, after the various factions tried, they realized that the Rubik's Cube could be activated, but they couldn't teleport people over. Until one time, someone dripped 4 people's blood on the Rubik's Cube. Under the Rubik's glow, the 4 of them vanished. However, the Rubik's Cube only shook for a moment before returning to normal. It was as though nothing had happened. It was unknown if the 4 people were dead or alive. Before long, many factions discovered this phenomenon. Only 4 people could activate the Rubik's Cube. It wouldn't work if there were too few people or too many people. However, the people who teleported over basically died immediately. They didn't send any news back. The Rubik's Cube only shook for a moment before there was no movement. The temperature on that planet is too high. Ordinary humans can't withstand it at all. It's useless even if they teleport over. In the bureau, an inspector was reporting to Wei Ge. The censor had done the most experiments, and a large number of death row prisoners had already died. Wei Ge didn't look up as he continued reading the information in his hand. It was a star chart, but it wasn't a modern star chart. Instead, it was an ancient star chart used to distinguish celestial bodies. The experiment ends here. Don't touch the magic cube for now, Wei Ge said to the censor as he looked at the star chart. Yes, Director. The inspector responded, hesitated for a moment, and said, Director, now all parties are asking us for information, and the League of Defender is the most pressing. How should we reply? Wei Ge placed the star map in his hand on the table and pushed it in front of the censor. He said indifferently, Make a few copies of this star map. If anyone comes to ask for more information, give them a star map if the benefits are sufficient. Will that work? The Bureau picked up the star map and looked at it before looking at Wei Ge in puzzlement. Although the star map was an ancient version, it wasn't too rare. It wouldn't be difficult to get his hands on it. Go ahead. Wei Ge didn't explain and got him to leave. After the censor left, Wei Ge held his chin with his hand and thought for a moment. As though he had thought of something interesting, he picked up his phone and edited the star map he had just taken. He clicked on a friend and sent it over. Zhou was studying the giant bird skeleton when he suddenly heard his phone ring. He took out his phone and realized that it was a message from Wei Ge. What does this mean? Zhou clicked on the message and realized that it was a star map. It was a very crude one. The stars marked on it weren't as detailed as the current star map. Furthermore, there weren't any names of the stars. However, on the star chart, there was a star that was marked with a red circle. Zhou compared the star map with his singularity universe, but he couldn't tell which cosmos these stars belonged to. This was because Zhou's singularity universe was very detailed, and the star map was missing too many stars, so it was difficult to compare them. Is this star the planet in the Rubik's Cube? Zhou sent a message to Wei Gu. Yes, Wei Gu replied simply. What's the name of this planet? Zhou had no choice but to continue sending messages. Think about it yourself. Wei Gu was even more straightforward this time. Wouldn't it be easier to tell me? Zhou said gloomily. I like seeing you want to know, but don't know. How about this? Beg me properly, and I'll tell you out of kindness. After Wei Gu sent the message, the corners of his mouth curled up smugly. When Zhou saw Wei Ji's message, he closed the chat window. What a joke. I have so many teachers here. I don't believe that I can't recognize a star map. Zhou took the star map to Yu Qiubai. After Yu Qiubai looked at the star map, he glanced at Zhou and said, Little one, you should take some time to learn about culture apart from cultivation. This star map is the ancient division of the North Pole. The star circled with a red line is the first star of the Big Dipper. It's called Dubhe, also known as Ravenous Wolf. This is the Big Dipper. Zhou looked at the star map again and realized that with Dubhe as the starting point, the 6 stars behind it formed a shape that resembled a spoon. He couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. Actually, this can't be blamed on you. The star maps drawn by ancient people naturally aren't as detailed as they are now. However, you should still recognize such an obvious celestial body like the Big Dipper. After Yu Qiubai said that, he asked curiously, Why are you suddenly interested in star maps? The planet shown on the Rubik's Cube is very likely Dubhe. Zhou checked the information about the Big Dipper on the internet and suddenly discovered something amazing. The Big Dipper was the brightest celestial body in the North Pole. This was the ancient division of the East District, and according to the division of the West District, the Big Dipper belonged to the Ursa Major constellation. Zhou couldn't help but recall the giant bear that had ascended into the cosmos from Lao Juntai. He thought to himself, could it be that the giant bear has something to do with this dimensional zone? However, constellations were Western, while the giant bear was an Eastern dimensional creature. Furthermore, it had ascended into the cosmos from Lao Juntai. He found it odd. Chapter 1498. Zhou was naturally not the only one who knew this news. However, to most people, it didn't make much of a difference whether the planet on the magic cube was Dubhe or not. Quack, it said that the planet is the Dubhe star of the Big Dipper. What do you think? Xiao Luchuan immediately called Zhang Chunxiu. The Zhang family was best at these things. Zhang Chunxiu said, That's the Dubhe star of the Big Dipper, but I advise you not to target it. Why? Xiao Luchuan asked in puzzlement. You should know that the Dubhe star is also called the Greedy Wolf star, right? Zhang Chunxiu said. I know, although I can't observe the celestial phenomena at night like you. I've heard of Star-Lord Covetous Wolf's name. Isn't he synonymous with Wisdom Star and Lucky Star? Xiao Luchuan said. That's because you don't know much about greed. Heaven's pivot is indeed auspicious, but under certain circumstances, greed is an ominous omen. Before things are clear, it's best not to touch it, Zhang Chunxiu said solemnly. For real. Xiao Luchuan was still in disbelief. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Zhang Chunxiu didn't say anything else and hung up. I didn't say that I didn't believe you. Why are you so angry? Xiao Luchuan mumbled and put down the phone in his hand. Many people asked Zhang Chunxiu about it, but Zhang Chunxiu only said some ambiguous words to ordinary people. Only a few people would persuade them not to touch the Dubhe star. I have to get the Dubhe companion beast back no matter what. Mad Sword Immortal's silhouette appeared in the unfinished Tower of Babel, giving orders to Immortal and the group of protectors. Your Excellency, we will definitely do our best to fight for it. However, you should also know that there are many heroes on Earth now. Our League of Defender doesn't have an absolute advantage. Furthermore, there are still variables like universe creatures. It's unknown if we can obtain the Dubhe companion beast, Immortal said with a bow. I only want results, Mad Sword Immortal coldly said. I also hope that there will be a good result, Sien said, neither servile nor overbearing. Crazed Sword Immortal's gaze was like a sword as he stared at the Immortal. It was as if he wanted to split the Immortal's body apart. However, the Immortal just stood there with his eyes lowered as if he didn't see anything. Whoever can retrieve the Dubhe Star's companion beast can become the spokesperson of my immortals in the human world. I will personally bestow him with the strongest guardian of the immortals, said Berserk Sword Immortal. The Celestials had always respected the strong, and Berserk Sword Immortal believed that humans were the same. He wanted to encourage the League of Defender to split. However, Blood Shaman and the other guardians did not seem to hear him, as they remained on both sides of the immortal. A cold glint flashed in the Mad Sword Immortal's eyes, but he forcefully suppressed the killing intent in his heart. It was just as Wang Mingyuan said. The current situation on Earth was rather clear. Even if the immortals started to cultivate new forces of power, they would not be able to take effect within a short period of time. If they want to continue to maintain competitiveness on Earth, they can only continue to use the League of Defender, and there are not many other options. The 6 great clans had always been vassals of the Holy Land. Although the 6 great clans wanted to break away from the Holy Land's control, they might not be able to do so completely. Secondly, even if they could escape, people who had just jumped out of a wolf's den probably wouldn't easily jump into a tiger's den. Then there was the Federation government, the Holy Spirit Association, and the various warlords. Under Hui Haifeng's leadership, the Federation government had always been developing the strength of humans, making it impossible for them to be used by the immortals. The Holy Spirit would directly devour the Guardians. If the immortals cooperated with it, they would probably only be giving them food. It would be difficult for them to truly control it. As for the various warlords, Berserk Sword Immortal didn't mind giving them some benefits if there was a chance to be used by the immortals. However, there weren't many warlords that could reach the level of the 6 great clans. It wouldn't be a short period of time to control them. At this stage, Berserk Sword Immortal only needed to continue using the League of Defender to work for the immortals. However, Berserk Sword Immortal had already made up his mind to establish a faction that was completely obedient to the immortals as soon as possible and kick the League of Defender out. Don't worry. When you need it, my race will definitely help you. The Tower of God has to be repaired as soon as possible. Otherwise, even if my race wants to help you, we won't be able to deliver it to you. Although Berserk Sword Immortal said that, he thought to himself, I only need to repair a portion of the Tower of God. I can use it to enter Earth and re-establish a human faction that belongs to the immortals. Once I succeed, I'll kill that bastard Wang Mingyuan first. The Tower of God has been attacked twice in a row. Many of the materials can no longer be obtained. It's very difficult to repair it. I wonder if you have a way to repair it, Your Excellency? Immortal kicked the ball back to Berserk Sword Immortal. Although Berserk Sword Immortal wanted to kill Immortal with one strike, he couldn't do so. All he could do was say, there's naturally a way. Back then, my race placed guardian cocoons in many mystic realms. At this moment, those mystic realms have already turned into dimensional zones. I will send you the information regarding the guardian cocoons. After you find the guardian cocoons, use the help of the guardians inside to easily occupy those dimensional zones and obtain the resources inside. We will definitely do our best to serve you, Your Excellency. Immortal led the group of guardians and bowed. Zhou hadn't figured out what was going on with the land and the giant bird skeleton, but he didn't dare take the risk to experiment. All he could do was ignore it for the time being. At that moment, Zhou was studying his companion beasts. After the 2 golden WIRMs gave birth, another golden WIRM was born. However, this golden WIRM seemed a little different from its parents. Golden WIRM, Calamity Grade, Evolvable, Life Providence, Metal Life Form Life Soul, Gold Essence Wheel of Destiny. Love is firmer than gold terraform. Stater, S-grade, calamity domain, true gold fire refinement, human, strength, 100 speed, 100 constitution, 100 essence energy, 100 talent skill, Midas touch, strangulation, unstoppable, dominating body companion form. Stater Zhou, when didn't know what Stater was in its companion form. When the golden WYRM appeared in its companion form, he realized that its body had transformed into a coiling dragon pillar. It was clearly a pillar, but he didn't know why it was called Stater. With the experience of the Son of Heaven's 3 swords, Zhou attempted to place the 3 golden WYRMs into the fusion frame. Indeed, they could be fused. Furthermore, the success rate was 99.9%. There was almost no chance of failure. Should I fuse them or not? Zhou was somewhat hesitant. After all, there were 3 calamity-grade creatures. If they fused, even if they produced a hell-grade creature, it would only be 1 companion beast. It didn't seem worth it. Chapter 1499. The stats and skills are about the same. If 1 golden flood dragon can't deal with an opponent, adding 2 more golden flood dragons shouldn't be of much use. Zhou hesitated for a moment before pressing the fusion button. Golden light flashed as the 3 golden flood dragons emitted a shocking glow. Finally, the entire phone screen was filled with golden light. When the light gradually dissipated, the 3 golden flood dragons vanished. All that was left on the phone screen was a pair of golden scissors. The 2 golden flood dragons were the scissors blades, and 1 golden flood dragon was the anchor, transforming into a golden flood dragon scissors. Golden flood dragon scissors, calamity grade, evolvable, life providence, metal life form life soul, gold essence wheel of destiny. Love is stronger than gold terraform. Golden flood dragon scissors, S-grade, calamity domain, true gold fire refinement, hell, strength, 200 speed, 200 constitution, 200 essence energy, 200 talent skill, Midas touch, strangulation, unstoppable, dominance body, cleaving in 2 companion form. Golden flood dragon scissors Zhou couldn't help but be overjoyed when he saw the golden flood dragon scissors stats. Although it was a 3-for-1 exchange, the stats of the golden flood dragon scissors were definitely better than the 3 golden flood dragons. Ignoring everything else, the golden flood dragon at the human stage only had 100 stats, but the golden flood dragon scissors at the hell stage had doubled its stats. The abilities didn't seem to have changed much, but there was an additional cleaving in 2 skill that looked very powerful. Who should I use to test it out? Zhou looked at the dungeon on his phone and realized that the Venus dungeon had been refreshed an hour ago. It was a good time to try it out. Crack! Crack! The moment the golden flood dragon scissors appeared, the metal guards and golden battle god were sliced into 2. No one could withstand the might of its scissors. However, the golden flood dragon scissors also had a flaw. It could only cut through 1 creature's body at a time. It didn't have any AoE attacks. When the Calamity Gunner appeared, Zhou used the Soul Reflection Mirror to make the Calamity Gunner appear. With a golden flash, the Calamity Gunner's speed wasn't considered slow, but it still failed to react and was sliced into 2. Ding! A companion egg dropped with a crisp sound. Zhou was immediately overjoyed as he controlled the blood-colored avatar to rush over and pick up the companion egg. Zhou had been coveting the Calamity Gunner companion egg for a long time. Its long-range attack was truly impressive, especially the 7-shot. Without any means to restrain it, one wouldn't be able to escape the fatal shot. When luck comes, nothing can stop it. Zhou excitedly checked the Calamity Gunner companion egg stats. Gold Sniper, Calamity Grade, Evolvable, Life Providence, Sharpshooter Life Soul, Spear God Wheel of Life Spirit, 7 Sure Kill, S Rank, Calamity Domain, Bullet Domain, Mortal Level, Strength, 168 Speed, 179 Constitution, 107 Essence Energy, 178 Innate Skills, Unlimited Bullets, Metal Evasion, Super Rapid Shooting, Super Long Range Shooting, Bullet of Doom. Companion Form, Sniper Rifle. Haha, it's indeed a sniper rifle. Zhou was overjoyed. He had indeed been coveting this item for a long time. Compared to melee weapons, Zhou preferred firing from afar. Melee combat was something he had no choice but to do. If he could kill the enemy from afar, why would he charge forward and risk his life? Without any hesitation, Zhou hatched the gold sniper. This non-primary type companion B stats had already reached a certain level, so there was no need to waste crystals to raise its stats. To Zhou, it was very practical. Apart from its weak physique, the gold sniper's other stats were pretty good. It was considered pretty good at the human stage. A massive amount of essence energy was absorbed by the companion egg. Soon, the companion egg transformed into wisps of golden light that landed in Zhou's palm, forming a golden sniper rifle pattern. After a flash, the golden sniper rifle pattern slowly disappeared. Zhou extended his hand, and a golden sniper rifle appeared in his hand. However, the sniper rifle was larger than Zhou had imagined. Its style was very similar to the Barrett M82A1 sniper rifle, but it was even larger. It wasn't impossible to hold it in one's hand, but it was a little uncomfortable. With Zhou's inhuman physique, he could hold it and shoot, but it seemed like it was better to hold it at a fixed spot. Zhou changed dungeons and entered Chess Mountain. He set up the sniper rifle in the cave and aimed it at the fake immortals on Deer Terrace Pavilion. After aiming for a while, Zhou pulled the trigger. Bam! A fake immortal's head exploded as it returned to its original fox demon form and fell into a pool of blood. Bam! 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 Zhou shot one by one, blowing up the heads of the fake immortals. The butt of the rifle pressed against his shoulder, causing Zhou's shoulder to involuntarily tremble with the rhythm of the shooting. Seeing the fake immortals spin around, but unable to find the enemy, all he could do was have their heads blown up one after another. The pleasure was indescribable. What good item! This thing's shooting range is too far. It's much longer than the range of ordinary sniper rifles on Earth. Ordinary creatures won't be able to discover where the bullet came from. The more Zhou looked at it, the more he liked it. This item was an assassination weapon. In the future, if Zhou wanted to find trouble with the League of Defender again, he didn't need to approach the League of Defender's headquarters. 100 kilometers away, a single bullet could send those guardians to their deaths. With a bullet traveling at the speed of light, 100 kilometers was nothing. However, on second thought, the League of Defender now belonged to Jiang Yan. It wasn't appropriate for him to kill guardians. I should find an opportunity to make a trip to the Holy Land. I'll guard outside the Holy Land. I'll blow up every saint that comes out. Let's see who else dares to work for the Holy Land. With this in mind, Zhou wished he could grow wings and fly to the Holy Land. Of course, this was only a thought. It was clearly impossible to overturn the Holy Land with just a sniper rifle. Now, I have the golden sniper rifle for long-range combat and the golden flood dragon scissors for melee combat. With the soul reflection mirror as support, as long as I don't encounter a heaven realm dimensional creature, I should be able to put up a fight. Zhou searched his dungeon again and realized that Yang City had already respawned. He directly entered Yang City and released the golden flood dragon scissors. Every blood shadow that came was cut apart. The sniper showed no mercy. One shot was as simple as shooting balloons on the streets. After the Kuei ox appeared, the golden flood dragon scissors flew over and sliced it into two. The Kuei ox's powerful defense failed to withstand the force of the scissors. The sharpness of the golden flood dragon scissors was chilling. Too powerful. Zhou realized that he had too many weapons, but his defense couldn't keep up. The Kuei ox only dropped one essence energy crystal. Zhou's essence energy stats temporarily didn't have any room to improve, so he fed it to the soul reflection mirror, which had relatively low stats. Are you interested in cooperating? Zhou was just about to find a few more places to test the power of the golden flood dragon scissors and the sniper rifle when he suddenly received a message. Chapter 1500. Cooperate with what? Zhou asked in puzzlement when he saw that it was Jiang Yan who had sent him the message. Don't you know? For people are needed to enter W Star. No more, no less, Jiang Yan said. Don't tell me you're really that suicidal. Everything about Dubby Star is unknown now. Aren't you courting death by entering? Zhou didn't believe that this was a good opportunity to enter Dubby Star. If he rashly entered without knowing the situation inside, even a calamity grade might not be able to come out alive. Of course not now. I just want to be mentally prepared. I'll inform you when the time comes, Jiang Yin said. Then I really have to think about it, Zhou answered. Don't you have any questions? Jiang Yin sent another message. You will say what you can. You won't say what you can't say even if I ask, Zhou said frankly. There are many things that can't be confirmed now. It's useless to say anything else. However, this might be an opportunity to turn the situation around, Jiang Yin said. What situation? Zhou was momentarily puzzled by Jiang Yin's words. Think about it yourself. Jiang Yin replied after sending the message. Zhou held his phone and carefully read Jiang Yin's message again. He felt that this sentence was very interesting. There were many possibilities that could be contained in it. There were both minor and major theories. If it's the greatest possibility, Zhou thought about it carefully and found it impossible. After pondering for a moment, an idea surfaced in Zhou's mind. He wanted to head to Dubby Star to take a look. Of course, it was impossible for him to go through the magic cube. It might be difficult for other humans to reach Dubby Star from the cosmos, but Zhou wasn't one of them. The interstellar teleportation ability of the Singularity Universe could easily allow him to reach Dubby Star. With his defense, he could only reach the vicinity of Dubby Star and not enter it. The high temperature of Dubby Star shouldn't be able to injure him. Zhou mainly wanted to see if there was a tiny palm symbol in Dubby Star's dimensional zone. This was the most important to him. However, the universe was just too dangerous. Who knew if there were terrifying cosmic creatures waiting for an opportunity near Dubby Star? Zhou thought for a moment and decided to take the chick with him. Dubby Star was too hot, so such a place was the chick's stage. However, without the chick, it would be too dangerous for Guide City if the skeleton army appeared again. Typical companion beasts couldn't be too far from their owners. If Zhou wanted to go to Dubby Star, it would be too far away. It was impossible for him to leave a companion beast to watch over his home. This is a problem. Little Bear is stupid, and I don't know how strong it is. It's definitely not a good idea to leave it to guard the house. It's a pity that the antelope didn't come to Guide City. Otherwise, I would be at ease with it in school. After some thought, Zhou failed to come up with a good idea. He was afraid that something would happen to Guide City while he was gone. Old Zhou, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you call me over when there's such a fun place? Just as Zhou was considering the matter, he suddenly heard a familiar voice. Before long, Li Xian kicked open the courtyard door and swaggered in. Can't you wait for me to open the door? He realized that Li Xian hadn't come alone. There was someone behind him. Qinzhen, why are the two of you together? Zhou saw that the person who had come with Li Xian was the now famous female, sword immortal, Qinzhen. Don't misunderstand. We just happened to come along. She's here for you, Li Xian said with a nefarious smile. Senior, I heard that you want to build a human city in Guide City. Does the school still lack teachers? Qinzhen asked Zhou. Yes, of course. However, the treatment here isn't comparable to Sunset colleges. You have seen the situation here. I don't know when the school will return to normal, Zhou said. Just give me a place to stay, Qinzhen said seriously. What are you still thinking about? Hurry up and arrange a place for her to stay, Li Xian jeered. All right, as long as you are willing to stay, I won't mistreat you in the future. Zhou was lacking in manpower. An expert in the way of the sword like Qinzhen was a tutor at Sunset College to begin with. It was truly impossible to find one. Qinzhen didn't say anything else and only nodded. I'll find a place for you to stay first. Zhou was just about to take them to find a place to stay when he heard a voice coming from outside the yard. Zhou, if you don't mind, count the two of us in. Accompanied by the man's voice, two more people walked in. Tian Xiangdong, Fang Ruoxi, why are you here? Zhou couldn't help but be surprised when he saw his two old classmates. Just like Zhou, they had been admitted to Sunset College. However, Zhou didn't graduate. The two of them left Luoyang after graduation. As it didn't have any contact, Zhou didn't know where they went after graduation. However, he didn't see them in Guide City this time, So Zhou imagined that they had moved to another city. What are you talking about? This is our hometown. If our hometown is in trouble, we naturally have to come back to support it. Tian Xiangdong chuckled. Actually, I'm currently working in the League's political department. The higher-ups sent me back to be a spy to gather intelligence and report it. By the side, Feng Ruoshi said bluntly, my situation is about the same. If you have anything that's not too important, you can leave it to me. It's fine to do something for our hometown as long as it's within our capabilities. The two of them made their intentions very clear and left the choice to Zhou. Zhou smiled and said, it's naturally great to have free labor. Come along. I'll find a place for you to stay first. Zhou really wasn't afraid that the other factions would send spies. Even if he was afraid, there would be other spies coming even if it wasn't Feng Ruoshi and Tian Xiangdong. Instead of wasting time guessing who the spies were, he might as well keep Feng Ruoshi and Tian Xiangdong. Regardless of whether they really cared about their old friendship, they were still very good laborers. They were elites who had graduated from Sunset College and worked in government departments. Although the school's accommodation was extremely tight, Zhou still thought of a way to arrange a single room for them. Although it was converted from school office, it was already the best with the current conditions. Qinzhen didn't mind at all. After tidying up the room and putting down his luggage, he came over and asked Zhou, Senior, what can I do for you? Don't worry. Rest up today. There will be many things waiting for you in the future, Zhou said with a smile. Qinzhen nodded and really returned to his room to rest. This junior isn't bad, Li Xian said with a smile as he walked. Chapter 1501. Old Zhou, what exactly are your plans? Don't tell me you really want to build a human city in such a place? Although this is your hometown, there aren't any barriers here at all. There are unexplored dimensional zones everywhere. You can't possibly stay here your entire life, right? Li Xian said after returning to Zhou Wen's place, leaving only the two of them. I originally wanted to find a dimensional zone to build a city, but unfortunately, I haven't found a suitable place for the time being. I can only make do with this place for now, Zhou Wen said as he stroked the bear's back. I studied the nearby dimensional zones before coming. There's really no suitable place to build a city. Guide Ancient City is a good choice. Once the door is closed, it won't be easy to attack. But that place is too dangerous now. We can't enter at all, much less build a city, Li Xian said. If it was that easy to build a city, this place would have long been occupied. The various factions are eyeing this place, but they haven't done anything yet. It's obvious how difficult it is to build a city here. Zhou also knew that it wasn't a good place to build a city. You already know that? Why are you still building a city here? Li Xian looked at Zhou Wen in puzzlement. If it's done so easily, what's the point? Zhou Wen said with a smile. Li Xian curled his lips and said disdainfully, do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? If it wasn't for something, would you have built a city here? I think if you have the time and energy, you would just lie in bed and play a few rounds of games. Zhou Wen laughed. You know me best. I won't hide it from you. There's something very important to me in Guide Ancient City, but I don't have the ability to take it now. Therefore, I have to build a city here and guard this place to prevent the things in the ancient city from falling into the hands of others. Do you still remember that you once said that you wanted to build a city that belongs to us? How about it? Stay here. This city will be ours. Cut the crap. Why else would I come here? Do you think this is a tourist area? Li Xian curled his lips. That's good. With you around, I'm relieved, Zhou Wen said with a smile. What do you mean? From what you say, you want to be a hands-off boss. Li Xian immediately felt that something was amiss. That's not what I mean. However, I do want to make a trip out and take a look at Dubhe, Zhou Wen said. You can watch, but don't go in, Li Xian said. I know. Familiarize yourself with the situation here first. Once you're familiar with it, I'll make a trip. Zhou Wen planned on giving Li Xian some time. Do you think our Li family's intelligence network is useless? I'm afraid I know the situation here better than you do. All right, do whatever you need to do. Leave this to me. With Qinzhen's help, as long as it's not a natural disaster, nothing will happen, Li Xian said smugly. How is your second brother? When Li Xian mentioned the intelligence network, Zhou Wen thought of Li Maobai. The Li family's intelligence network had nothing to do with Li Xian. It was established by him. It's fine. He's doing very well. He can eat, sleep, and curse. If it wasn't for the fact that his eyeballs are still in the cabinet at home, I would have suspected that he's blind. He's even more normal than a normal person. He's so normal that he's a little perverted, Li Xian said with a smile. I cultivate an essence energy art with healing powers. I could try to see if I can restore his eyes, Zhou Wen said. It's useless. He said it himself. His eyes are the eyes of a ghost. If he can't restore them, he'll be like that for the rest of his life. However, he also said that you don't need to use your eyes to see things. It's even more useless to use your eyes to see people. Therefore, it doesn't matter if he has eyes or not. When Li Xian said that, his expression was somewhat helpless. Zhou Wen guessed that Li Maobai was definitely educating him when he said that. The two of them chatted for a while. Early the next morning, Zhou Wen called Qin Zhen, Fang Ruoxi, and company over. He introduced Yu Qiubai and the other core members to them so that they could do things in the future. Before leaving, Zhou Wen took the chick back with him, but he didn't tell anyone that he would be leaving for a period of time. Apart from Li Xian, Zhou Wen didn't plan on letting anyone know about this. If everything went smoothly, he should be back soon. There was no need to alarm anyone else. After returning to his room, Zhou Wen took the chick and used the Singularity Universe's teleportation ability. With Dubhe as his target, he teleported over. When Zhou Wen teleported out, he saw a sea of light and flames. The temperature was terrifyingly high. Despite wearing the dragon and prison armor, Zhou Wen still felt his body heat up. However, the chick seemed very excited. It opened its mouth and sucked in, causing the surrounding flames to surge into its mouth like spring water. Zhou Wen immediately felt the temperature around him drop significantly. When he focused his gaze, he realized that he was very close to Dubhe. The active flames on the planet's fountain sometimes exceeded Zhou Wen's location. Even steel would instantly melt into juice here. Zhou Wen raised Truth Listener's ability to its limits and flew close to the huge planet with the chick. This planet was many times bigger than the sun. Wherever Zhou Wen flew, there were flames everywhere. The dazzling light made his eyes uncomfortable. With the chick around, the high temperature wasn't too bad. The nearby flames were swallowed by the chick. He didn't discover any dimensional zones within the range he could sense. However, the light and fire essence energy on this planet were extremely terrifying. What was even more terrifying was that there was a planet that emitted a terrifying glow near this planet. Although Zhou Wen had long heard that Dubhe was a visual double star with a companion star, he was still shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. However, after flying around the two planets for a while, Zhou Wen didn't even find a dimensional zone, much less the tiny palm symbol. Strange, could it be that the dimensional zone is inside the planet? If that's the case, it'll be a little difficult to find a dimensional zone without using the magic cube. Zhou Wen looked at the planet that was even more terrifying than the sun. If he wanted to rush in, he wasn't sure if the dragon and prison armor could withstand it. Just as Zhou Wen was thinking about how to find a dimensional zone, he suddenly saw the chick's feathers stand on end as it stared intently at the flames below. What's that? Zhou Wen traced its gaze and saw a huge shadow swaying in the flames. It was like a giant whale in the sea. All he could see was a shadow, but he couldn't determine what it was. Seeing it swim in the flames, the shadow was even bigger than an aircraft carrier. Zhou Wen didn't wish to take the risk and planned on returning to Earth with the chick. However, to his surprise, the chick suddenly let out a long cry and spread its wings, charging towards the shadow in the flames. Chapter 1502. Don't be rash. Zhou Wen wanted to stop the chick, but it was already too late. The chick was too fast and had already charged into the flames. The chick's body burned with phoenix flames. It was still dazzling amidst the dazzling flames as it quickly charged towards the gigantic shadow. Roar! The liquid matter on the planet spewed out, producing a terrifying brilliance and energy release. The explosions and radiations were accompanied by terrifying shock waves and spots of light. Instantly, Zhou saw all sorts of strange explosions of light, completely losing his vision. The dragon-imprisoned armor turned red from the terrifying energy radiations, like a piece of metal that had been heated red at a high altitude. The constantly erupting shockwaves forced Zhou's body to constantly retreat. As he retreated, Zhou saw a monster's head that looked like a rainbow crystal extend out from the various energy explosions. Just its head was comparable to an aircraft carrier. It opened its mouth wide and devoured the chick flying in the flames. It was unimaginably huge. The chick's body was like an ant in the monster's mouth, about to be devoured. A phoenix cry tore through space as the chick flapped its wings. The phoenix flames on its body surged as every golden feather spewed out golden phoenix flames, instantly incinerating the chick's body. A gigantic golden flaming phoenix appeared in the monster's mouth. It flapped its wings, and at the instant the monster's mouth closed, it seemed to distort space as it glided out of its mouth. Its movements were extremely elegant and agile. It didn't seem fast, but it managed to escape the monster's lightning-like bite. The monster's figure rushed out of the liquid. Its body was like a whale, and its entire body was like rainbow glass. There were horns on its head and wings on its back. It looked strange and beautiful. Although it was huge, it didn't appear bloated. Its lines were smooth, giving it an indescribable sense of strength. The chick dodged the monster's bite as its body circled in the flames. The surrounding flames gathered towards its body, causing the phoenix flames on its body to burn even more intensely. From slow to fast, from stillness to movement, from elegance to agility, the chick's speed instantly reached its limits. Like a golden blade of light, it crossed the monster. The chick appeared behind the monster, and a long golden burn mark appeared on the monster's abdomen. It looked like a line of melted magma. Well done! Zhou was overjoyed. The chick's strike seemed to have sliced open the monster's entire abdomen. The monster was probably severely injured. However, in the next second, Zhou saw the monster's body burn with flames as the wound on its abdomen rapidly healed. With a flap of its wings, infinite flames rose up, forming a huge flaming barrier that enveloped the nearby area. The barrier's range was too large. By the time Zhou realized it, it was already too late. His body was trapped in the barrier as the energy inside kept erupting. It was as though countless hydrogen bombs were constantly exploding, filling the area with light explosions. Bang! Zhou's body slammed into the barrier as the dragon-imprisoned armor turned redder. If not for absolute defense, it would have long been destroyed. What level is this guy? Just the power in the domain is already so terrifying. Zhou used spatial teleportation to forcefully rush out of the barrier, avoiding the fate of death. Thankfully, this barrier can't block spatial powers. Zhou stood outside the barrier, but he could still sense the terrifying energy inside. The fire phoenix that the chick had transformed into constantly danced in the light, leaving behind golden phantoms. It constantly flashed around the monster, leaving a long burn mark on the monster's body every time. However, as a fire elemental creature, the monster's fire elemental immunity and self-healing ability were equally terrifying. The wounds left behind by the chick weren't enough to injure it. After the monster cast the barrier, it stopped attacking the chick. It floated in the barrier and allowed the chick to attack it. However, the barrier kept shrinking. As the barrier shrank, the chick's range of movement decreased, and the energy blasts in the barrier became more intense. If one looked at it with their eyes, the barrier was like a miniature sun. Furthermore, it was a miniature sun that was constantly shrinking. Zhou realized that the chick's situation wasn't looking good. The chick looked very strong, but it ultimately hadn't reached the calamity grade. The reason it was able to deal with the monster was because the chick was a phoenix. It had a top-notch fire elemental bloodline, and this place could be considered its home ground. The monster also had fire elemental powers, so the chick had an extremely strong immunity to fire elemental powers. It could even absorb them, so it could fight the monster. The problem was that no matter how strong the chick was, it hadn't reached the calamity grade, so its physique was still much weaker. If it was restrained, it wouldn't be able to fight the monster head-on. Zhou summoned the golden flood dragon scissors and threw it at the barrier. The golden flood dragon scissors instantly cut a hole in the barrier and rushed into it. However, the hole in the barrier was immediately filled with flames. None of this mattered to Zhou. His target wasn't the barrier to begin with, but the monster of an unknown level. The golden flood dragon scissors transformed into a golden beam of light that cut at the seven-colored, glass-like monster. With a crack, the monster's massive body couldn't withstand the golden flood dragon scissors' slash and was sliced into two. The golden flood dragon scissors are too powerful. Zhou was very gratified. It wasn't a waste of him combining three calamities into one. However, Zhou immediately realized that something was amiss. The monster had been sliced into two, but the barrier domain hadn't disappeared. Furthermore, it was still shrinking. This meant that the monster hadn't died. Indeed, large amounts of flames spewed out from the spot where the monster's body was sliced apart. The flames on both sides intertwined, causing its body to fuse back into one. Golden Flood Dragon Scissors, kill it. Zhou ordered the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors to attack again. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors activated again, transforming into a golden beam of light that sliced at the monster. The monster still didn't dodge. This time, the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors sliced its head into two, but it still failed to kill it. Its head quickly fused back together. The chick also used its wings to attack the monster again and again. The wing strikes that were like blades of light left wounds on the monster's body, but they quickly healed. Zhou couldn't help but frown. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors was very powerful, but it was limited by his primordial energy. When he used his full strength and used cleave, he could only withstand 3 such attacks before needing time to recover his primordial energy. He had already used cleave twice in a short period of time. If he couldn't kill the monster with the last strike, he could only give up. Just as Zhou was thinking, the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors had already used its full strength. It used cleave for the 3rd time and cut open the monster's tail. Chapter 1503. Zhou was somewhat nervous. When he saw the monster's tail fuse again, he couldn't help but be disappointed. However, in the next second, Zhou saw the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors launch another slash. Its might didn't show any signs of weakening. It looked like its primordial energy was still abundant and didn't show any signs of primordial energy exhaustion. How can this be? Zhou was first taken aback before he immediately thought of the reason. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors Calamity Domain was called True Gold Fire Refinement. Zhou had never understood the use of this Calamity Domain. This was because he didn't produce flames when he used the Calamity Domain with the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. Now, Zhou finally understood that the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors domain power seemed to only be effective in flames. How can there be such a strange domain? If it's in a place without flames, wouldn't this domain be useless? Yet, it really came in handy. I was lucky. Zhou was pleasantly surprised. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors used its abilities again and again, as though it didn't need to worry about its primordial energy. Zhou also discovered a strange phenomenon. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors body was slowly changing. The Golden Scissors body became deeper and thicker, and the scales on its body became more crystalline. He took out his phone to take a look, and indeed, he realized that the various attributes of the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors had increased. Only then did Zhou understand that the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors Calamity Domain wasn't a combat domain. It was likely a self-evolution domain that could use the power of flames to evolve. The monster was probably at the Hell stage, and it happened to be fire elemental. Furthermore, it was in a high-temperature environment like Dubhe, allowing the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors to unleash its greatest might. Upon seeing this scene, Zhou hoped that the monster would be killed a little later and use its Calamity Domain to raise the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors attributes. Even if he couldn't advance to the Heaven Realm stage, he could raise his basic attributes to the maximum of the hell stage. Zhou had already summoned his sniper rifle, but he put it away when he saw this situation. After being attacked again and again, the monster also realized the danger. It no longer passively took a beating. Its eyes shot out high-temperature beams, and its mouth spewed out high-temperature energy bullets. However, such attacks weren't of much use to the chick and the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. Instead, it allowed the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors to receive better training, and its attributes increased significantly. The more Zhou looked at it, the more he liked it. The Golden WIRM Scissors was just too suitable for combat in such an environment. Its unparalleled offensive strength, coupled with his evolved domain, would only become stronger. If I want to clear Dubby's dimensional zone in the future, I'll probably need the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors to do its best, Zhou thought. The monster was also unlucky. It clearly had the standard of a hell-level monster, but it just had to encounter the little bird and the Golden WIRM Scissors. It couldn't unleash its combat power and suppression power at all. This also made Zhou clearly understand that even if he reached the Calamity grade with a single system, it would be difficult for him to unleash his full combat strength when he encountered his nemesis. There was no absolute invincible power in this world. Any power could be restrained. The powers given to Zhou, won by the Lost Immortal Sutra, undoubtedly gave him a huge advantage. Although he might not be able to crush someone of the same level, perhaps there were people who could match him in certain aspects. Zhou would have a huge advantage in a relatively complex environment and battle. It was almost difficult to restrain him, and he could adapt to all kinds of combat environments. Ordinary people definitely couldn't fight like Zhou. They could only resolve their flaws through companion beasts and other means. However, in terms of companion beasts, Zhou had a greater advantage. Probably not many people on Earth had Calamity-grade companion beasts. It's no wonder so many people want Venus's companion beasts. There are many stars in the universe. In such an environment, the Golden WIRM Scissors can unleash extremely powerful combat strength. Unless it's crushed, it will become stronger the more it fights. Zhou looked at the numbers on his phone. As the barrier shrank, the energy within grew stronger and stronger. The Golden WIRM Scissors' stats increased. Crack! The Golden WIRM Scissors sliced the monster's body apart again, but this time, the sound was somewhat odd. As the monster's body split open, the enchantment shattered as well. The energy inside scattered in all directions and soon disappeared. The monster's body had been cut into too many times, but this time it was somewhat different. Its body that had been cut into two was rapidly crumbling instead of fusing. The massive glass-like body constantly shattered as the crystals turned to dust. It was melted by the planet's high temperature as its body gradually fell towards the planet. The chick let out a long cry as it grabbed the crumbling body with one claw and dragged it into space. Even without the effects of the high temperature, the monster's body was still rapidly crumbling. Soon, all that was left was a crystal ball that had been broken into two. The crystal ball didn't shatter, and there was a strange energy flowing inside. It was likely that the crystal ball had been sliced into two by the Golden WIRM Scissors that killed the monster. The chick let out a happy cry as it flew over and swallowed the two halves of the crystal ball. Soon, the phoenix flames on the chick's body became thicker and thicker. Finally, it formed an egg-shaped barrier that constantly flickered with light. Is it about to advance to Calamity? Zhou called out a few times, but he didn't receive a response from the chick. He knew that the chick might have entered an evolutionary state again. He reached out and stored the egg that the chick had transformed into the chaos bead. Zhou looked at the Golden WIRM Scissors floating beside him. Although he couldn't count on the chick now, with the Golden WIRM Scissors, there shouldn't be too much risk as long as he didn't enter a dimensional zone. Zhou decided to continue searching to see if he could find a dimensional zone on Dubhe. As he searched, he checked the Golden WIRM Scissors information and realized that its 4 stats had already reached 267. If the monster hadn't died too early, it would have increased further. Zhou tried to get the golden WIRM scissors to enter the high-temperature region of Dubhe, but as a companion beast couldn't be too far from its owner, Zhou didn't dare head down. It was difficult for the golden WIRM scissors to enter deep. The surface temperature wasn't of obvious help to its evolution. W was huge. Zhou searched for a long time, but he didn't find any traces of a dimensional zone. All he could do was teleport to another companion star to take a look, but he still didn't find it. Strange, why can't I find the dimensional zone? Zhou knew that there was definitely a dimensional zone. He could directly reach it from the magic cube, but he couldn't find it outside. Could it be that the entire dimensional zone is inside Dubhe? If that's the case, I probably won't even be able to enter the dimensional zone without enough fire elemental defensive equipment. Zhou was already wondering where he could get a set of fire elemental defensive equipment. It would be best if it was at the Calamity grade. Chapter 1504. If Zhou really wanted to enter, it wasn't completely impossible. However, he didn't wish to take the risk. It took quite a bit of time to search the two planets. Just as Zhou was about to return, his heart suddenly stirred. Dubhe is one of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. Now that Dubhe has changed, does that mean the other 6 stars have changed as well? Zhou thought for a moment and felt that it shouldn't be too much of a problem if he just took a look. The stars that humans could see in the night sky were basically stars. The other 6 stars of the Big Dipper were also stars. Although they were somewhat different from Dubhe, the environment of the stars was somewhat similar. After Zhou teleported over, he only took a closer look. He similarly didn't discover any dimensional zones. Zhou came to the 6th star, Mizar. After not discovering anything outside Mizar, he specially went to look at the companion star, the Auxiliary. Mizar was a famous twin star. Its companion star, the Auxiliary, was one of the few twin stars that could be distinguished with the naked eye on Earth. As the Auxiliary was relatively dark, ancient times used the Auxiliary star to test the vision of soldiers. Those who could see this star were considered to have vision of 1. 5. However, when Zhou really searched for the Auxiliary star, he realized that there wasn't only 1 companion star near Mizar, but 3. The 2 pairs of twin stars orbited each other. It was far more complicated than what could be seen on Earth. It was a quadruple star system. The 4 stars orbited according to a certain trajectory, and one could see the scene of 4 suns in the sky. It looked extremely magical. Earth was a single star system, so it was impossible to see such a scene. Zhou suddenly thought of an ancient myth. Legend had it that the sun was a golden crow, and in the past there wasn't only 1 golden crow, but 10. Under the restrictions of the celestial arch, only 1 golden crow appeared every day to bring light to the land. However, there was one time when 10 golden crows ran out together, nearly roasting the land dry. A god, Ho-E, shot down 9 golden crows with a divine arrow, leaving only 1 golden crow to bring light to the land. If this wasn't just a legend, but a real event, Zhou wondered if the solar system could have been a quadruple star system at some point in time with 9 other companion stars. Of course, Zhou only had that thought. After all, companion stars didn't appear randomly, much less disappear as they pleased. Even if they did, who could really shoot down 9 stars? Furthermore, they had only discovered the 7 combination star system at the moment, and had yet to discover the existence of the 10 combination star system. Zhou chose one of the planets to take a look, but when he teleported to the vicinity of the planet, he was surprised to discover that there was a monument erected on the planet. That tablet didn't seem to be made of gold or jade. It was unknown where it was made. It stood on the planet, but the terrifying heat and energy explosion couldn't damage it in the slightest. Most of the monument was enveloped by flames and high-temperature liquid, but the parts that were exposed were thousands of meters tall. They were black like metal, and they were densely engraved with symbols that Zhou didn't recognize. Tiny palm symbol. Zhou looked at it for a while and realized that there was a tiny palm symbol on the side of the monument. He was immediately pleasantly surprised. He quickly took out his phone and snapped a picture of the tiny palm symbol, immediately entering the download screen. Unfortunately, there's only one of the Mizar 4 stars. It's not the W star that has appeared on the Rubik's Cube, Zhou thought regretfully. As he had been downloading, Zhou didn't wish to waste any time. He browsed all 4 stars before heading to the last star of the Big Dipper, Alcade. In the end, he only saw the stone monument on that planet. He didn't discover anything else. Zhou had spent quite a bit of time circling the planet. In terms of Earth days, it should have been a few days, but the dungeon hadn't been downloaded successfully. It was still being downloaded. The last time I downloaded the Venus dungeon, it didn't take so long. Zhou felt that something was amiss. There was no point in staying any longer. Zhou directly teleported back to Earth. Looking at the time on Earth, he realized that he had been gone for more than half a month. However, compared to interstellar travel that took light years, Zhou's teleportation ability was already very sick. This bit of time wasn't considered long. However, when Zhou returned to Guide City, he realized that it had changed drastically. The people who were originally squeezed near the school had all settled down in the nearby city. They didn't camp outside the school. Li Xian did pretty well. I never expected him to have such talent. Zhou couldn't help but be alarmed when he saw that everyone was orderly and no longer panicked like before. Zhou returned to school and went straight to Li Xian. He realized that there were 2 other people in Li Xian's room. The 3 of them were chatting. Zhou wasn't unfamiliar with these 2 people. One was Feng Qiuyan, and the other was Ming Xiu. Coach, Ming Xiu and Feng Qiuyan stood up when they saw Zhou and shouted in unison. Why are you here? Zhou asked in puzzlement. I heard that you want to establish a city, so my family got me to come over to take a look. If possible, I plan on moving here, Ming Xiu said. Feng Qiuyan nodded and said, my family has the same plans. If you establish a city, I hope you can leave a place for our Feng family. Are you joking? Zhou knew that the 2 of them were terrifyingly strong. Furthermore, with the strength of their respective families, they had their own cities, so there was no need for them to submit to Zhou. Even if they really had to choose a place to go, the conditions provided by the 6 families and even the local warlords were much better than what Zhou had. Coach, I'm really not joking, Ming Xiu said with a smile. Although our Ming family's current environment isn't bad, that area doesn't have much room for development. The lack of Dimensional Zone's resources has already limited the Ming family's future achievements. We have long been searching for a suitable place. Since you want to establish a city, I naturally won't let go of such an opportunity. You probably don't know much about Guide City's situation, right? It's not that easy to survive here. It's still unknown if we can establish a city. Zhou didn't have full confidence in establishing a city here, so he didn't want to lie to them. Danger and opportunity coexist. How can there be any gains without taking risks? Our Ming family has long studied Guide City's situation. To be honest, our Ming family had once considered occupying Guide City, but we eventually gave up because we weren't confident of doing so. Ignoring our Ming family, even the 6 families don't dare establish a city here. Ming Xiu paused for a moment before saying solemnly, now, all the major factions are waiting to see your outcome. No one believes that you can really establish a city here, but I believe that you will definitely be able to gain a foothold here. Therefore, no matter what my family chooses in the end, I will stay here. I'm the same, Feng Qiuyan answered briefly. Chapter 1505. The 2 of you don't blindly decide. Think about it again. Zhou originally wanted them not to blindly believe in him, but after thinking that it wasn't appropriate to say that, he changed his decision at the last moment. Ming Xiu smiled and said, it's not blindly. We also know that there are risks, but investments have risks. High risks have high returns. We think we can bet on you, coach. Up to you. Just don't regret it if you lose. Zhou thought for a moment before asking Ming Xiu and Feng Qiuyan, what's your cultivation level now? Ming Xiu and Feng Qiuyan's eyes lit up when they heard Zhou's question. Their expressions turned solemn. Ming Xiu said first, I've already advanced to the Terror grade. The mythical fluid I used was created by a time elemental dimensional creature. It was a coincidence. It was originally a calamity creature, but when it was born, some problems occurred. It It was invaded by an enemy and was heavily injured. When it was on its last breath, I encountered it. It could be considered a bargain. I got Senior High Feng to help me create the mythical fluid. Now that I've advanced to the Terror grade, the Terror transformation ability I obtained is Time Arbiter. Everyone's life providence, life soul, wheel of life soul, and Terror transformation ability were their greatest secrets. However, Ming Xiu explained his abilities in detail in front of Zhou when without any intention of hiding anything. Coach, do you think there's anything I need to correct? After Ming Xiu said that, he looked at Zhou when in anticipation. You have your own thoughts and cultivation direction. Furthermore, I'm not good at time elemental abilities, so it's not my place to give you any advice. Zhou, when paused before saying, however, if you want to advance to the Calamity grade, you can pay attention to time elemental dimensional zones. Perhaps you will gain something. Coach, you actually know how to advance to the Calamity grade. You should have already advanced to the Calamity grade, right? I understand, Coach. In the future, I'll specially find some time elemental dimensional zones to train myself. I hope to comprehend the true Tao of time and advance to the Calamity grade as soon as possible like you. Ming Xiu nodded in enlightenment. Feng Qian continued, Coach, I've also advanced to the Terror grade, but my situation is a little special. My mythical knight comes from the Wind God Cave protected by our Feng family. Feng Qian told Zhou when in detail, but he wasn't too surprised. Back then, Feng Qian had once summoned a very strange companion beast. It was said that it came from the Wind God Cave protected by the Feng family. Zhou had long felt that the place wasn't simple. Feng Qian originally wanted to hunt a dimensional creature suitable for him in the Wind God Cave before creating it into mythical fluid. However, to his surprise, the magical companion beast on him led him deep into the Wind God Cave. There was a strange cave there. At the bottom of the cave was a small pool with a small spring. Feng Qian was pushed into the pool by his companion beast. When he came out, the spring water in the pool had already dried up, and he had advanced to the mythical stage. Later on, Feng Qian went to look for Hui Haifeng. After Hui Haifeng helped him check his body, he told him that his body state was the state after using the mythical fluid to advance. The clear spring should be a mythical fluid that was naturally or artificially created. As for what type it was, even Hui Haifeng couldn't detect it. Feng Qian's essence energy didn't seem to have any special attributes, but at times, he could unleash unbelievable power. Feng Qian himself didn't know what type of power he used. He had always cultivated it as a wind elemental power, but his terror transformation had nothing to do with the wind. Its name was Rebellion. Ming Xiu still had some traces of the dimensional creature's bloodline. For example, his ears looked a little like a cat's ears. As for Feng Qian, there was no sign of the effects of the mythical fluid. He was no different from a human who didn't use it. Coach, should I go to a wind elemental dimensional zone to cultivate? Feng Qian asked Zhou when in anticipation after explaining his situation. In fact, Feng Qian had previously gone to many dimensional zones with wind elemental creatures to cultivate, but the effects weren't ideal. Let's find a place first, and let me see your strength, Zhou said. With Feng Qian's description, he couldn't tell what was going on with Feng Qian's strength, so he decided to take a look. Of course, Zhou didn't believe that he could teach Feng Qian anything. He only wanted to help him figure out what type his strength belonged to. It's been a long time since I've received personal guidance from you, Coach. Count me in, Ming Xiu said excitedly. When Li Xian saw how excited Ming Xiu and Feng Qian were, he thought to himself, could it be that these two fellows are natural masochists? They won't feel comfortable unless they are beaten up. If that's the case, they should learn from me. Why are they looking for old Zhou? My ability to take a beating is more suitable for them. However, it's too late for them to change their cultivation to my essence energy art. What a pity for two good saplings. The four of them and a bear came to an uninhabited area in the wilderness. When Little Bear saw Zhou when return, it stuck to him, refusing to leave at all. During Zhou Wen's absence, he got Li Xian to help take care of Little Bear. Little Bear was already reluctantly willing to let Li Xian approach it, But the moment Zhou, when returned, he threw Li Xian to the side and ignored him. Ingrate. No, it's a white-eyed bear. It's a waste of me feeding you so much good stuff. Pooey, Li Xian mumbled gloomily. Coach, please advise me. Feng Qiuyan summoned his saber. At the same time, a mysterious force circulated around his body as though a wind was flowing around him, causing his clothes and long hair to flutter. What kind of power is this? It even comes with a hairdryer effect? Zhou looked at Feng Qiuyan's appearance and felt somewhat envious. He looked like an immortal riding the wind with an indescribable elegance. However, Feng Qiuyan didn't think too much as he slashed out with the saber. Zhou eyesight was definitely top among the Terrorgrade, but the moment Feng Qiuyan's saber slashed out, it vanished from his vision, making it difficult for his vision to keep up with the saber's speed. This surprised Zhou. However, Feng Qiuyan's saber could prevent Zhou from keeping up with his vision, but it couldn't escape Truth Listener's augmented hearing. Zhou extended 2 fingers and instantly clamped down on the blade that Feng Qiuyan had slashed out. The blade was less than 3 centimeters away from Zhou's neck. Again, Zhou released his fingers and said to Feng Qiuyan. Feng Qiuyan seemed to think that this was a matter of course. After retracting his saber, he attacked Zhou again. Feng Qiuyan's saber was terrifyingly fast. It was already close to the speed of a calamity grade. Furthermore, as he constantly slashed out, the saber's speed kept increasing. However, this speed wasn't enough to injure Zhou, but it was enough to surprise him. Chapter 1506. Zhou only defended and didn't attack. In the beginning, he could deal with it easily, but Feng Qiuyan's saber speed became faster and faster. Zhou had no choice but to activate the power of Human Emperor to raise his body's stats to the calamity grade. Only then could he suppress Feng Qiuyan in terms of speed, preventing him from hitting him. This fellow's saber is really fast. It's extraordinarily fast. It should be related to his terror transformation ability, right? However, his strength doesn't look like it's purely wind elemental power. Zhou thought to himself. Ming Xiu's eyes lit up as he watched from the side. His toes unconsciously moved back and forth, having the urge to join the battle. Coach is coach. If I want to win my battle with Old Feng, I can't let him have a chance to slash out more than 3 times. Otherwise, I will definitely lose. However, no matter how many strikes Old Feng slashes, he can't even touch the corner of Coach's clothes. This is no longer in existence on the same level, Ming Xiu praised. Li Xian curled his lips and said, Aren't you spouting nonsense? You and little Yin Yan were taught by old Zhou. It would be a wonder if you can hit him. However, Li Xian's words were a little premature. He originally believed that no matter how fast Feng Qiuyan's saber was, there was ultimately a limit. It was impossible for him to really reach the speed of a calamity grade. However, this rule clearly didn't apply to Feng Qiuyan. Later on, Feng Qiuyan's saber speed really broke through to light speed. It was a speed that only a calamity grade could achieve. How would this fellow do it? From the looks of it, the Wind God Cave isn't simple. The things inside probably have a great origin. Zhou was somewhat surprised. Reaching light speed at the terror grade was definitely not something an ordinary terror creature could do. Zhou now wanted to head to the Wind God Cave to take a look. If he could find a tiny palm symbol, he would make a killing. If I let Feng Qiuyan continue slashing like this, and his saber speed continues to increase, even I might not be able to dodge it. It's best I end this quickly. With a thought, Zhou extended 2 fingers into the saber beam and clamped down on the saber that resembled a stream of light. Instantly, the saber went from motion to stillness. It stopped there, unable to move at all. At the same time the saber was clamped by Zhou, Feng Qiuyan's legs went limp as he fell to the ground. He panted heavily as sweat gushed out, making him look as though he had just come out of a bathtub. His clothes were drenched, and he looked like he had overdrawn himself. As expected of Coach, he can even tell that I'm at my limit. He ended the battle just in time, preventing me from overexerting my body and injuring myself. Feng Shuyan felt somewhat ashamed. He felt that he shouldn't have forced himself to continue fighting. Zhou Wen released his fingers that were clamping the saber and used Truth Listener to scan Feng Shuyan's body. Seeing that he had only overexerted himself and wasn't injured, he immediately relaxed. However, he mumbled inwardly, "What's the attribute of Feng Shuyan's strength?" After watching for so long, Zhou Wen failed to figure out Feng Shuyan's attribute. It looked like the power of the wind, but it was somewhat different. There aren't any attributes like metal, wood, water, fire, or earth. It's also not like space or time. It doesn't seem to have any special attributes. It seems to be somewhat similar to my Tao Sutra and Qi refinement art, but it's also somewhat different. If I have to say, it's more similar to the small heavenly cycle killing array. However, my small heavenly cycle killing array is an array formation that combines multiple skills. His strength is singular, but it has so many similarities to the small heavenly cycle killing array's power. This is a little odd. Zhou Wen wasn't too sure either. This was because Feng Shuyan's strength was actually very different from his small heavenly cycle killing array. It wasn't completely the same. "Coach, how can I make myself stronger?" Feng Shuyan's stamina hadn't recovered as he panted heavily. He looked at Zhou Wen eagerly and asked. Zhou Wen hadn't figured out which type Feng Shuyan's strength belonged to, so it wasn't convenient for him to fool him with nonsense. However, looking at Feng Shuyan's expectant gaze, he couldn't bear to say that he didn't know. After some thought, Zhou Wen said to Feng Shuyan, "I'll give you something. Take it and take a look. Perhaps you might gain something from it." As he spoke, Zhou Wen took out a coin and circulated the small heavenly cycle killing array, attaching it to the coin. The coin instantly spun like a top. When Zhou Wen released his hand, the coin floated in the air and constantly spun as though it was being propelled by infinite force. It didn't show any signs of falling. "Coach, don't worry. I definitely won't let you down. I'll figure out the mystery behind it," Feng Shuyan said as he stared at the spinning coin as though he had obtained a treasure. "It's just a trinket. Just take a look. There's no need to pay too much attention to it." Zhou Wen didn't know if this could help Feng Shuyan figure out his strength attribute. However, it definitely wasn't a bad thing to look at the power of the small heavenly cycle killing array. With Feng Shuyan's talent, he would more or less gain some insights. "Coach, you've already given something to old Feng. Shouldn't you give me one too? You can't be biased." Ming Xiao shamelessly came forward to ask for something. "I'm really not good at the power of time. I'll give you a move." Zhou Wen pointed at Ming Xiao. Ming Xiao extended his hand to block, but he realized that he couldn't block Zhou Wen's finger. The sword beam that bloomed from Zhou Wen's finger appeared half a beat late as it flew past Ming Xiao's cheek. "Isn't this my tomorrow's sword art? Coach, your training is much better than mine." Ming Xiao couldn't help but be delighted. Zhou Wen had actually cultivated his tomorrow's sword art. Although he had mastered it better than him, it was still his sword art after all. He felt honored that Zhou Wen was willing to practice it. "This isn't the tomorrow's sword art. Its name is Space-Time Bandit Kill. You can use it to compare with your tomorrow's sword art. Perhaps you might gain something." Zhou Wen told Ming Xiao some of the key points of Space-Time Bandit Kill. As he didn't have a skill crystal, Zhou Wen had no way of teaching Ming Xiao how to practice it. All he could do was tell him some of his experience. Whether it could be used depended on him. Ming Xiao and Feng Shuyan seemed to have obtained a treasure as they stopped pestering Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen led Little Bear and Li Xian back as Li Xian told him the situation in Guide City in detail. It turned out that Ming Xiao and Feng Shuyan weren't the only ones who had come over the past half a month. Many experts had also come to Guide City. Only then was Li Xian able to stabilize Guide City. Otherwise, with the original manpower, it was impossible to guard such a large area. These experts came from different places. Most of them were sent by the various factions. Hui Haifeng had also sent quite a number of people. There were more than 10 people who had advanced to the mythical stage using the mythical liquid. What gave Zhou Wen a headache was that Hui Play had come as well. Is Hui Haifeng crazy? He sent his only son to such a place? Zhou Wen felt his head swell. Hui Haifeng got Hui Play to pass the message. He said that it's safer for his son to stay with you than with him, Li Xian said. From the looks of it, Hui Haifeng's presidency isn't that comfortable. Zhou could only shake his head with a bitter smile. Chapter 1507. Boom! The sky was filled with dark clouds, and lightning bolts crisscrossed. Some lightning bolts struck the ground from the sky, creating a large pit in the soil of the wilderness. In that pit there were coffins. Kacha! Another bolt of lightning struck down, striking one of the coffins. It was unknown what kind of wood the coffin was made of. When the lightning struck it, sparks flew everywhere, wrapping around the entire coffin, but it was unable to damage it at all. Bolts of lightning fell one after another, but as if they had a mind of their own, they landed on 5 different coffins. Lightning flashed above the 5 coffins. After a while, the lightning on the coffins disappeared, and the dark clouds and storm in the sky also dissipated. With a few soft sounds, the lids of the 5 coffins were slowly pushed open, and the corpses sat up from the coffins one by one. Although they were corpses, their bodies were no different from living people. There were no signs of decay, other than the lack of heartbeat. It was impossible to tell that they were dead. All 5 corpses climbed out of the coffins. 4 of them bowed to the other corpse and said, "Master Mad Sword Immortal, those guys from the League of Defender would never have thought that we had already left a backup plan on Earth. They thought that we had to rely on them and the Tower of Babel. Should we go to the League of Defender and teach them a lesson?" Mad Sword Immortal glanced at his own body and said coldly, "The power that these 5 ancient corpses can withstand is limited. The power of a calamity-grade super will cause irreversible damage to the ancient corpses. Once we lose the protection of the ancient corpses, the damage caused to us by the laws of Earth is too great. Therefore, our goal this time is to find a new representative. There will be plenty of opportunities to teach them a lesson in the future. Moreover, we still need them to rebuild the Tower of Babel. It is not appropriate to let them know that we have other ways to come to Earth. Master, according to the information we received, there are many warlords on Earth, but there are only a few who can make a name for themselves. In the Eastern District, the family in Luoyang is the strongest. Their strength is enough to compete with the 6 great families, and they even have the potential to surpass them. If we can use them, it will naturally be the best choice, but one of the ancient corpses did not finish his sentence. If you have something to say, just say it. Hemming and hawing is not the style of you 4 immortals, Mad Sword Immortal said coolly. Because the League of Defenders' progress in repairing the Tower of Babel was slow, Mad Sword Immortal did not want to be controlled by others, and in order to get rid of Wang Mingyuan's constraints, he did not hesitate to use the secret plan left by the Immortal Clan in the mythological era. He wanted to find a new spokesperson as soon as possible to replace the role of the League of Defender. Because he had used the ancient corpse to descend, his strength would be limited by the ancient corpse's physique, and he would not be able to unleash the Berserk Sword Immortal's true strength. In order to be on the safe side, the Berserk Sword Immortal had asked the 4 immortals to descend on Earth together. The 4 immortals were all calamity-grade supers. Although they had not reached the heaven grade like the Berserk Sword Immortal, they were still existences at the hell grade. Even if they were affected by the ancient corpse and could not use their full strength, their strength was not to be underestimated. The Book Immortal continued. However, Wang Mingyuan was born in Luoyang, so it's hard to guarantee that he isn't related to the Yin family. Moreover, Zhou Wen, who was on the same side as the Yin family, was one of Wang Mingyuan's disciples. Choosing the Yin family doesn't seem very suitable. Painting Immortal added, although the Yin family doesn't resist contracting a guardian, they are more inclined towards developing technological means. They aren't very enthusiastic about contracting a guardian. The chips in our hands aren't that attractive to the Yin family. Berserk Sword Immortal quietly listened to them before saying, the Yin family has already matured. It won't be easy to subdue them. Furthermore, there's the risk of exposing our trump cards to Wang Mingyuan. The 4 immortals believed that Berserk Sword Immortal didn't have any designs on the Yin family, but to their surprise, Berserk Sword Immortal changed the topic and continued. Now that Zhou Wen has left the Yin family and wants to establish a city in Guide City, this is an opportunity. To establish a city in a place like Guide City, even the family might not succeed. Furthermore, Zhou Wen is alone. Now that he is in his most difficult situation, it's also our best opportunity. But Zhou Wen is Wang Mingyuan's disciple. Isn't that inappropriate? The four immortals looked at each other, clearly doubting Berserk Sword Immortal's decision. However, Berserk Sword Immortal said indifferently, the best way to defeat an enemy is to destroy his confidence. The reason why Wang Mingyuan dares to be so arrogant in the dimension is because his disciples control the strongest factions on Earth, leaving us with no other choice. If we can destroy the capital he is so proud of, Wang Mingyuan will definitely be thrown into chaos. Killing him will be a piece of cake. Thinking back to Wang Mingyuan's slap, Berserk Sword Immortal's eyes couldn't help but flash an imperceptible killing intent. Zhou Wen is Wang Mingyuan's disciple after all. How can we ensure that he will be of use to us and not be like Jiangyan? Painting Immortal said, after some thought, it's because even Wang Mingyuan can't think of it that makes him more valuable. In comparison, Zhou Wen, who has left the family, is the easiest to deal with among Wang Mingyuan's disciples. As long as we can destroy his faith, I will use the Immortal Fate spell to subdue him. No accidents will be allowed to happen, Berserk Sword Immortal said. When the four immortals heard that, they revealed looks of enlightenment. Painting Immortal said with a smile, I never expected you to be able to use the Immortal Fate spell. We are relieved. Book Immortal pondered for a moment before saying, I heard that the Immortal Fate spell is somewhat similar to a contract spell. It requires the other party to willingly accept it for it to be effective. How do you plan on subduing Zhou Wen? When a person is in danger, it's easiest for their defenses to be breached. Isn't it easy for a place like Guide City to get into trouble? When they're faced with a problem they can't resolve, we'll descend from the heavens to save them from danger. It will naturally have miraculous effects. As Crazed Sword Immortal spoke, he headed for Guide City. The four immortals already understood Berserk Sword Immortal's intentions as they hurriedly followed. At that moment in Guide City, Zhou Wen felt a headache as he looked at Hui Play in front of him. The primordial energy art Hui Play cultivated in was Zhou Wen's Qi refinement art. The greatest characteristic of this primordial energy art was that it was rich. As long as one had enough primordial energy crystals, there was basically no threshold for it to advance all the way to the epic stage. Hui Play's family was so poor that all they had left was money. They could use all sorts of high-level primordial energy crystals freely. At a young age, Hui Play had already advanced to the epic stage. Now, he was just short of advancing to the mythical stage. Hui Haifeng didn't rashly let Hui Play use the mythical fluid. He had sent Hui Play here firstly for Hui Play's safety, and secondly, he wanted Zhou Wen to help Hui Play choose a path. Hui Play was Hui Haifeng's only son. Apart from Zhou Wen, Hui Haifeng didn't feel at ease leaving Hui Play's future to anyone else. Chapter 1508. Zhou Wen could roughly guess Hui Haifeng's thoughts, but it was also a headache for him. It was impossible to gather 9 life providences and 9 life souls to advance to the mythical stage with a pure human body. At the very least, Zhou Wen hadn't discovered any methods other than the Lost Immortal Sutra. The only 3 paths left were Spirit Casting, Mythical Fluid, and Contract Guardian. In the past, Spirit Casting and Mythical Fluid were indeed good choices. Hui Hai was also an expert in producing mythical fluids. It was not difficult to create a mythical fluid that was suitable for Hui Hai to play with and increase the success rate. However, Hui Haifeng didn't do so directly. Instead, he handed Hui Play to Zhou Wen. It could be guessed that Hui Haifeng wasn't fully confident of success. Even if there was only a 1% risk, Hui Haifeng didn't wish to take it. This wasn't the crux of the problem. The crux of the problem was that Zhou Wen had heard from the humanoid monster in ancient sovereign city that it was best if humans could ensure the purity of their bloodline. If the prerequisite was to ensure the purity of the bloodline, contracting a guardian was a more suitable path. Therefore, after some thought, Zhou found himself in a dilemma. Master, I've tried many times and used a large number of high-level essence energy crystals, but I can't advance to the mythical stage. Did I cultivate wrong? Hui Gui came in front of Zhou and took out his notebook. As he asked Zhou, he recorded everything, hoping to record Zhou's teachings. Zhou thought to himself, it would be strange if you can advance to the mythical stage. In ancient times, this would be called the limits of heaven. Since ancient times, there haven't been many humans who have broken through the limits of heaven with a pure human body. From what Zhou knows, even a human emperor like Swirenshi has failed to do so. Among the people Zhou knows, other than himself, only Jing Daoxian has that possibility. However, it's impossible to determine if he advanced to the mythical stage with a pure human bloodline. Show me your life providence and life soul. Zhou didn't wish to dampen Huey's enthusiasm, so he said that first. Hui Play put away the notebook and stood up. He circulated the qi refinement technique and quickly condensed his qi into a life soul that floated in front of him. What's this? Zhou sized up Hui Play's life soul and found it odd. When Zhou cultivated the qi refinement art, the life soul he condensed was a sword pill. The life soul Hui Play condensed was completely different from his. Not only was it not a sword pill, but it wasn't a weapon like a sword. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like a phone. Your life soul is a phone? Zhou asked as he sized up the life soul. It's not a phone. It's more accurate to call it a super smart brain. Hui Play explained the detailed abilities of his life soul. The more Zhou heard, the more he found it odd. Hui Play said that it wasn't a phone, but many of the life soul's functions were similar to a phone's. Hui Play could even connect to the Federation's network through his life soul. What was even more terrifying was that this thing could quickly crack all kinds of passwords. It was very easy to open electronic locks. The bank vaults that used high-tech protection equipment were no different from beauties sleeping naked in front of Hui Hai's life soul. Of course, that wasn't the only use of the super smart brain life soul. There were many other uses, but none of them were directly related to combat. Your life soul is a little special. Can you use this life soul to enter the Zhang family's server to search for information? Zhou asked Hui Play. The server controlled by the Zhang family had the highest level of encryption and defense in the Federation. He had never heard of anyone being able to hack in to search for information. Of course, I've gone a few times before, but there's nothing interesting inside. I only found a few pill, formulas, and talisman production methods. There's nothing else of value. Hui Play said to Zhou as he skillfully controlled the super smart brain life soul to connect to the network. Before Zhou could say a word, he saw a lot of data appear on the screen of the super smart brain. Clearly, he had succeeded. You've done this many times in the past, right? Have you seen the private servers of the other families? Seeing how skilled Hui Play was, Zhou knew that he had done such things many times. I've taken a look, but there's nothing interesting. The various families deliberately store important information in devices that aren't connected to the network. Most of the information I can find isn't of any practical use, Hui Play said casually. Zhou thought to himself, you really dare to do it. It's no wonder the Hui family has been doing well recently. Although Hui Haifeng doesn't have much power in the Federation, he has been careful and has been doing well. He hasn't made any major mistakes in decision-making. It's probably partly thanks to Hui Play. This is the first time I've seen a life soul like yours. I need to consider it before I can give you some advice. Before that, you should learn more combat skills, Zhou said half-truthfully. I'm already very familiar with my combat skills. Hui Play said confidently. Combat skills aren't something that can be mastered just by being familiar with them. In actual combat, you naturally have to be honed in a real battle. How about this? Go to your Uncle Li Xian's place and get him to arrange for you to participate in the defensive battle. Continue training on the battlefield. Hui Play's eyes lit up when he heard that he could go to the battlefield. Can I really? Dad has always refused to let me participate in real battles. He only makes me fight those dimensional creatures at home. It's boring. Of course. I have a final say here. It's useless even if your dad comes, Zhou said with a smile. Long live Master. I can finally go to the battlefield. Huiplei immediately burst into excitement. At that moment, he looked like a child. After sending Huiplei to Li Xian's place, Zhou was still somewhat worried. He specially called Li Xian and got him to protect Huiplei's safety. This was Hui Haifeng's only child, so he couldn't really die here. After hanging up, Zhou picked up the mysterious phone and realized that the dungeon hadn't been downloaded successfully. It was still downloading. Strange, why is this dungeon so big? Could it be that the dungeon downloaded this time isn't a single auxiliary star, but a dimensional zone of the entire Big Dipper? Zhou was very suspicious. Otherwise, a single dungeon shouldn't have taken so long to download. Just as Zhou was studying it, he received a message from Li Xian saying that something had happened to the Dubby dungeon. Zhou hurriedly opened the live streaming app on his phone. There were many streamers live streaming the Rubik's Cube on the front page. When he clicked on it, he discovered a problem. Previously, the Rubik's Cube's image had been fixed on the constantly erupting Dubby star, but at that moment, the Rubik's Cube's image seemed to rapidly sink into the scorching planet. Soon, the scene was completely filled with dazzling explosions of light. However, not long after, the scene suddenly darkened. A strange palace appeared in the Rubik's Cube. Chapter 1509. The palace was purple in color, as though it was carved out of purple jade. Only a door was revealed, and the rest of the palace was in the high-temperature liquid that constantly radiated light. There were only strange engravings on the door. There were no words, so it was unknown what the dimensional zone's name was. In front of the door stood a creature with an extremely majestic shape. Is it a dinosaur? Zhou looked at the creature in front of the palace in surprise. Its hind legs were long, its front claws were short, and its tail was like a lizard's. Its mouth was filled with sharp teeth. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like a Tyrannosaurus from Earth's prehistoric civilization, not a Western dragon or wyvern. There were many dinosaur fossils on Earth, but up to now, there was no unified explanation for why dinosaurs went extinct. The creature that appeared at the palace's entrance was like a Tyrannosaurus from movies and television. However, it was different from the movies and television shows. This Tyrannosaurus's body was scarlet red, and it was burning with scarlet flames. The Dubby dimensional zone is indeed inside the planet. That Tyrannosaurus can break through the high temperature and radiation outside. Before reaching the dimensional zone, it should be at least at the mortal stage, right? While Zhou was still pondering over it, the Tyrannosaurus had already slammed into the palace's door. With a loud boom, the palace's door was forcefully opened by the Tyrannosaurus. However, there was a resplendent orange-red light inside. He couldn't see anything. The Tyrannosaurus didn't hesitate to rush through the door. The Rubik's Cube finally became clear, allowing people to see the scene inside the palace. Inside the huge palace, there were huge pillars supporting the palace. There were a total of 24 pillars in 2 rows. Each pillar seemed to be carved from amethyst and had a diameter of more than a meter. Furthermore, there were mysterious patterns carved on each amethyst pillar. It was temporarily impossible to tell what the mysterious patterns represented. And at the end of the 2 rows of pillars, which was also the back of the palace, sat a creature wearing amethyst armor. As its entire body was enveloped by the amethyst armor, Zhou didn't know what it looked like or if it looked human. After the Tyrannosaurus rushed into the palace, it roared and charged at the amethyst-armored creature sitting there. It exerted strength on its hind legs and charged forward like a beam of light. Its speed wasn't inferior to Zhou. Zhou had long expected that it was at the Calamity grade, so it wasn't surprising that it had such speed. The T-Rex rushed in front of the amethyst-armored creature, but the amethyst-armored creature remained seated. It was like an old monk in meditation, not moving an inch. The Tyrannosaurus opened its mouth, which was full of sharp teeth, and was about to bite the helmet. In that instant, the amethyst-armored creature raised one of its hands and pressed it against the upper jaw of the Tyrannosaurus. In Zhou's eyes, this was the last scene. In the next second, the explosion of light erupted like a volcanic eruption. The Tyrannosaurus's body and the entire palace were drowned by the explosion of light. When the light dimmed, the image of the Rubik's Cube had returned to the outside of Dubhe, which meant that the Tyrannosaurus had died and failed to pass the test. A calamity-grade Tyrannosaurus couldn't even withstand a single blow. Where did that guy wearing the purple crystal armor come from? Zhou was secretly alarmed. At the same time, he was somewhat glad that he hadn't rashly entered the Dubhe dimensional zone. Otherwise, he would have been vaporized by that terrifying strike. Although the scene stayed in the palace for a short period of time, the purple crystal armor on the creature left a deep impression on Zhou. The mysterious purple appeared noble and gorgeous in the light. It was as crystalline as the god battle armor worn by a god, but it was impossible to see what kind of creature was inside the armor. That armor should be at the calamity grade, right? Zhou was somewhat tempted. He looked at the armor and realized that it had extremely powerful fire elemental defenses. Of course, that was only a thought. Before figuring out the origins of the purple crystal armored creature, Zhou wasn't willing to take the risk of heading to Dubhe. Although the T-Rex had been killed in one strike, it had finally allowed people to witness the dimensional zone of Dubhe. All the major media outlets were scrambling to report on the purple crystal armored creature. People were guessing the origins of the purple crystal armored creature and if it had anything to do with the myths and legends of Dubhe. There were also a number of people who were studying the killed T-Rex. They wanted to verify if the T-Rex had anything to do with the dinosaurs on Earth, hoping to solve the mystery of the T-Rex's demise on Earth. Mount Mangdang, also known as Fairy Peak. Han Gaozu, Liu Bang had slain the white snake uprising here, establishing his hegemony. After the dimensional storms, Mount Mangdang had become an extremely complicated large-scale dimensional zone. It contained many small dimensional zones, similar to Dragon Gate Grotto. This was originally under the jurisdiction of Guide City, but after the dimensional storms, few people came here. Even if someone came here, it was very likely that they wouldn't be able to return. At that moment, there were 5 expressionless people standing in front of the snake's slaying monument. The person in the lead was reading the inscriptions on the monument. It was none other than Berserk Sword Immortal and company. Zither Immortal, it's up to you, Berserk Sword Immortal said indifferently as he looked at the snake slaying monument. The Zither Immortal behind him responded and sat in front of the snake slaying monument. He assumed a posture of playing the zither, but there was no zither in front of him. The Zither Immortal's fingers plucked the air. There was clearly nothing there, only air, but under the Zither Immortal's fingers, a faint zither music sounded. The zither music was like an immortal's. Even people who didn't know music could sense the beauty of the zither music. However, accompanied by the beautiful zither music, strange sounds came from within Mount Mangdang. Before long, they saw lone ghost-like dimensional creatures walk out of the mountain in increasing numbers. When the lone ghost-like dimensional creatures passed by Berserk Sword Immortal and company, they didn't even look at them. It was as though Berserk Sword Immortal and company didn't exist at all as they headed for Guide High School. More and more lone ghosts rushed out of Mount Mangdang, forming an army that was like a tidal wave. Their numbers were uncountable. Boom, boom. A terrifying sound suddenly came from the depths of Mount Mangdang. Before long, a gigantic white snake that resembled a true dragon slithered out from the depths of the mountain range. Wherever it passed, the lone ghost would automatically dodge or be crushed under its body. The white snake's body was crystalline and jade white. It wasn't ugly. When it raised its head, it exuded an elegant beauty. I never expected there to be a calamity creature in Mount Mangdang. Upon seeing the huge white snake, Berserk Sword Immortal was slightly surprised. He didn't know that there was a calamity creature here. He originally wanted to release the lone ghosts inside to attack Guide High School. Chapter 1510. A few soldiers in charge of sentry duty were surrounding a fire on the rooftop, using metal pots to cook food. Old gang, how long do you think we will have to endure such days? A young man held a hard sesame seed cake in his hand. He broke it into small pieces and soaked them in a bowl of boiling water. As he ate, he asked the middle-aged man beside him. Old Gang said, "Don't think too much. If Zhou hadn't come, Guide City would have long fallen. We wouldn't even have a bite to eat. Of course I know that this is the best situation, but it's not a solution to continue like this. My parents and sister are living in a temporary building. If a dimensional creature were to rush in, the consequences would be unimaginable," the young man said. Old Gang sighed and said, "There's nothing we can do about it. I heard that other places use dimensional zones as natural barriers to build human cities, but the dimensional zones in our guide city are just too strange. Where do you think we could build a city?" "That's true. What's that?" the young man suddenly exclaimed in surprise midway. A few of the soldiers quickly got up and looked into the distance on the other side of the building. They saw many ghostly shadows on the street in the distance, as if there were countless vengeful ghosts wandering in their direction. Could it be an illusion? Old Gang rubbed his eyes and looked again, only to be horrified to realize that a specter was already right in front of him. He fell back in fright. The specter followed him like a shadow as it pounced at Old Gang. "Old Gang!" The young soldier beside him summoned his companion Bee-Saber and slashed at the specter. However, the steel saber formed by the companion beast slashed through the specter without any obstruction. It was as though the specter was just an illusion. The specter pounced on Old Gang and instantly vanished. However, the look in Old Gang's eyes changed. His eyes shimmered with a red glow, making him look eerie and frightening. His body also stood up like a puppet. "Old Gang, what's wrong with you?" Before the young man could figure out what was wrong with Old Gang, ghosts landed one after another. A few soldiers brandished their weapons with all their might, but they failed to injure the ghosts. Soon, the ghosts pounced on them, turning them into strange appearances like Old Gang. It wasn't just here. The entire vicinity of Guide City was filled with wandering ghosts. They were charging towards Guide High from every direction, and anyone they encountered would quickly be possessed by them. What the hell are these? There were screams everywhere. In a short period of time, Guide City seemed to have turned into hell. The dimensional creatures on MT Mangdang had special attributes. They were basically pure souls, so ordinary attacks were ineffective against them. In a short period of time, a large number of people were possessed as they charged towards Guide High School with the Ghost Army. The army responsible for suppressing the ancient city was also possessed by ghosts. Not only did they stop suppressing the skeleton army, but they also rushed to the city they were guarding behind them. The skeleton army also rushed out and once again wreaked havoc on the ground. At the top of an abandoned building, Berserk Sword Immortal and the other four were enjoying the chaos of a city filled with screams and explosions. It's difficult for ordinary powers to injure soul-type creatures. Although these soul-type creatures aren't of very high levels, it's not that easy to destroy them. Furthermore, it's even harder to destroy them after being possessed, unless Zhou is willing to kill the possessed humans as well. Painting Immortal said with a smile. Zither Immortal added, "Just these soul-type creatures are enough to put Zhou in a bind. Now, with the appearance of the calamity-grade White Snake, even if Zhou can withstand it, Guide City will definitely fall. Hundreds of thousands of people will be possessed by wandering ghosts, turning into monsters that are neither human nor ghost. When the time comes, Lord, you will appear to save them. Zhou will have no choice but to submit." Berserk Sword Immortal said indifferently, "To make a person like Zhou work for me, just this isn't enough. I need greater pressure to completely destroy his psychological defenses." "Lord, do you plan on taking action personally?" Chess Immortal asked in surprise. "It shouldn't be to that extent. All of you are enough." Although Berserk Sword Immortal felt that Zhou wasn't someone ordinary humans could compare to, it wasn't to the point where he had to take action personally. From Berserk Sword Immortal's point of view, only Wang Mingyuan was worthy of him taking action. After all, Zhou was only Wang Mingyuan's disciple. Any immortal strength was enough to suppress him. Perhaps there's no need for us to take action. Just those soul-type creatures and white snake are enough to make Zhou Wen collapse. Book Immortal looked at the burning city. Tens of thousands of people had already been possessed by wandering ghosts. At this rate, all of Guide City would fall in less than an hour. Inside Guide High School, Zhou Wen, Li Xian, and company had already rushed out. Seeing the streets filled with wandering ghosts, they were alarmed. Seeing a few wandering ghosts rush over, Feng Qian drew his saber and slashed. His saber wasn't an ordinary saber, but his life soul. With this strike, the few ghosts were cleaved apart at the waist, causing their souls to dissipate. They even dropped a dimensional crystal. Ming Xiu's sword also stabbed at one of the ghosts, but it passed through the body of the ghost. It didn't hurt the ghost. This is a soul-type creature. Ordinary physical attacks are useless. Zhou Wen had seen such creatures before. They were basically pure spirit bodies, so physical attacks were useless. Truth Listener and the chick were best at dealing with such creatures. Unfortunately, Truth Listener was in an earring state and couldn't be unsealed. The chick was still evolving, so it was unlikely for it to come out anytime soon. However, even without Truth Listener and the chick, it wouldn't be difficult for Zhou Wen to finish off these soul-type creatures. What really worried Zhou Wen were the people who had already been possessed. Their bodies were controlled by the ghosts, and they attacked their loved ones instead. It wasn't right to kill them, but it wasn't right to not kill them either. As there weren't any defensive barriers on the periphery, Guide City fell too quickly. There were too many people possessed by the ghosts, and this was the true problem. Old Zhou, these dimensional creatures are too king annoying. The Zhang family is best at dealing with such things. But it's too late to invite them now. Li Xian's physical attacks weren't very effective against the ghosts. All he could do was use Planet Devourer to devour the ghosts. However, there were too many people here, and many of them were possessed by ghosts. Li Xian couldn't devour them all, so it was too troublesome to find the ghosts one by one. The possessed people were even more troublesome. Li Xian couldn't kill them, but it wasn't right if he didn't kill them either. With a thought, Zhou Wen summoned Great Brahma. The terror form of Great Brahma appeared behind Zhou Wen like a four-faced, eight-armed Buddha. It was as huge as a mountain. Great Brahma had four faces. The front was emotionless, while the back was enveloped by a black hole. The left face smiled without a word, while the right face wore a look of pity. Chapter 15:11. Apart from the back of Great Brahma, the other three sides didn't have much offensive strength. However, it wasn't absolute. Each side had its own uses. Under normal circumstances, Zhou Wen would use Great Brahma's frontal defense, as well as the terrifying black hole-like power on the back. He rarely used the power of the left and right sides. Now that he saw so many soul-type creatures, he could use the power of the right side of the face of compassion. Ordinary people couldn't see the existence of Great Brahma in his terror form, but as the lips of the face of compassion trembled, it produced a voice that sounded like chanting scriptures. Everyone heard a voice that sounded like Buddha chanting scriptures. Although it wasn't loud, it didn't have the power of lightning. When it landed in the ears of ordinary people, they didn't feel much. However, when the lone ghosts heard it, they wailed in pain. The low-level ghost creatures couldn't withstand it as they rolled on the ground. White gas spewed out from their bodies before dissipating in a short while. The ghosts in a radius of dozens of kilometers dissipated into white fog amidst the chanting voice. Inside Guide City, there was white gas rising everywhere. Many dimensional crystals and companion eggs landed on the ground, but ordinary people weren't affected. I never expected Wang Mingyuan's disciple to have mastered the transcendence ability. He must have received Wang Mingyuan's help, Zither Immortal said with a frown. The transcendence ability was the nemesis of ghosts. Among the Buddha race, only a few experts had the power of transcendence. Wang Mingyuan was only a subordinate of the Buddha race. He wasn't one of them, so he didn't seem to have mastered the transcendence ability. Zither Immortal and company never expected Zhou Wen's terror form to have the ability to transcend. From their point of view, Wang Mingyuan was a subordinate of the Buddha race. For Zhou Wen to master such an ability, it was definitely thanks to Wang Mingyuan's help. The people who had been possessed by ghosts spewed out white gas. After the white gas was spewed out, they fainted to the ground. Instantly, the city was filled with fainted humans. Those who hadn't been possessed by ghosts, and those who had woken up saw Zhou when floating in midair. The voice that sounded like Buddha's chanting came from him. As for the wandering ghosts that charged over from every direction, they would quickly turn into white fog the moment they entered the range of the scriptures. No one was able to approach the vicinity of Guide High School. The wandering souls and wild ghosts rushed over like a tidal wave. They looked extremely terrifying, but none of them were able to take even half a step into the lightning pool. Zhou was still the best. As expected of a human expert who can rank on the Rubik's Cube ranking. He's just too powerful. It's too terrifying. It's like the Buddha has descended into the world. With Zhou when guarding Guide City, perhaps we really don't need to think of ways to escape to other cities. Upon seeing Zhou Wen's might, everyone felt a lot more at ease. Many people who had panicked gradually calmed down. The army that Li Xian had just established was reorganized to suppress the skeleton army that had rushed out of the ancient city. Everything seemed to be developing in a good direction. Just when everyone thought that the crisis was about to pass, they saw a behemoth coming from afar. The moonlight-like brilliance easily attracted everyone's attention. They saw a gigantic snake with a body that looked like it was carved from white jade. It parted the tidal wave of ghosts and swam over. Just by raising its head, the white snake was similar to the nearby skyscrapers. The surrounding buildings looked like laughable toys beside it. Everyone retreated in horror. Even if such a gigantic snake's level wasn't high, its physical strength was something that ordinary people couldn't match. The Buddha race's transcendence powers are effective against ghosts, but against creatures like the white snake, they won't be able to gain an advantage. The chances of victory against a calamity-grade creature at the terror grade are slim, Chess Immortal said. The white snake flicked its tail, and the 30-story building was snapped in half by its tail. Half of the building flew up and smashed in the direction of Guide High School. Humans scrambled to dodge. Such divine might caused the humans to be dumbfounded. The power of a single tail was already so terrifying. The students and ordinary people in the school all fled out of the school in fear. Otherwise, with the half of the building smashing over at such a terrifying speed, the entire school, or even the area near the school, would be reduced to ruins. If they didn't escape, they would lose their lives. However, with their speed, it was impossible for them to escape the school before the building flew over. Seeing the building's shadow quickly envelop the school, everyone's faces revealed looks of horror and despair. Some of the more timid girls screamed and cried. Boom! Zhou Wen appeared in front of the building. As for Brahma's fiend godlike body, he appeared and sat cross-legged behind Zhou Wen. The face behind him had already turned around. 8 palms blocked the building, and at the same time, the black hole behind him kept swallowing, sucking the crumbling building into the black hole, preventing the debris from shooting out and injuring the people inside the school. Everyone looked at Zhou, Wen, and Brahma, who were floating in front of Brahma, as though they were looking at an immortal with a fiend godlike servant. What a powerful terror transformation power. Thankfully, he's only at the terror grade. If he were to advance to the calamity grade, I'm afraid that white snake wouldn't be his match, Painting Immortal exclaimed. The stronger he is, the more advantageous it will be for us. In the future, it will be much more convenient for Lord to use this Zhou Wen, Book Immortal said. That's right. When he's no match for the white snake, Lord will take action. He will have no choice but to submit, Chess Immortal echoed. As the few of them spoke, the white snake had already leaped up. Its body was huge, but its speed was unbelievably fast. It transformed into a huge white beam that swallowed Zhou Wen. However, the shockwave produced by its body breaking through the sound barrier shattered all the glass in the surrounding buildings. Many buildings collapsed from the shockwave, and trees were uprooted. Thankfully, there were ghosts around and no humans. Otherwise, who knew how many people would have died? Zhou floated in midair without any intention of dodging. He watched as the white snake arrived in front of him. Just as Chess Immortal and company were puzzled as to why Zhou didn't dodge, they saw a golden light flash from Zhou body as it met the white snake. No one saw what had happened. All they saw was the white snake's head being lopped off. Snake blood spewed out like a fountain as Zhou remained floating there, not even moving his hand. As for Brahma, who was behind him, he extended his palm and grabbed the white snake's head and body. He didn't let the white snake's corpse fall and smash into the humans below. Long live Zhou. He's too invincible. So apart from Human Emperor, there are still humans who could be this powerful. I made the right choice staying in Guide City. Pooey, you stayed because you couldn't leave. You still have the cheek to say that? Everyone was amazed by Zhou's strength. The four immortals and Berserk Sword Immortal were also alarmed. Although they felt that the white snake might not be able to kill Zhou, they never expected Zhou to kill the white snake in one strike. However, he never expected White Snake to be killed by Zhou in one strike. It was a calamity creature after all. Although it was only at the mortal stage, it was already shocking enough. Chapter 15:12. He actually has such a powerful calamity-grade companion beast. Chess Immortal said in surprise. There's nothing strange about that. Earth is rapidly mutating, and humans have already found a way to break through to the mythical stage. In this period of time, it's not impossible for top humans to have a chance of obtaining a calamity-grade companion beast, Berserk Sword Immortal said indifferently. Sir, do we still need to go to other dimensional zones to lure dimensional creatures over? Painting Immortal pondered. There's no need. We aren't familiar with the other dimensional zones, so we might not be able to lure the dimensional creatures out. Besides, we don't have that much time. Let's meet that Zhou directly. Berserk Sword Immortal glanced at Zhou in the distant sky and slowly walked towards the stairs. Zhou put down the white snake's body and quickly realized that there was a companion egg and a dimensional crystal in the white snake's body. There was no need to elaborate on the companion egg. It was definitely the white snake companion egg. As for the dimensional crystal, it was crystalline like a dragon pearl. There was a white snake's shadow swirling inside. It was a skill crystal. Zhou directly took out the companion egg and dimensional crystal. However, the companion egg was a little too big. It was half the height of a person and crystalline like white jade. Zhou took out his phone, hoping to see the attributes of the white snake companion beast. Although it had been sliced into two by the golden flood dragon scissors, it was a calamity-grade companion beast after all. Its skills didn't appear strong when fighting the golden flood dragon scissors, but it didn't mean that it wasn't strong. There are no weak companion beasts, only good ones. Therefore, Zhou placed great importance on this companion beast. Before he could take out his phone, Zhou suddenly frowned slightly and turned to look in a direction. 5 people came from afar. They walked in the crowd and didn't look too eye-catching. They didn't have any special aura. However, for some reason, the people in front of them would subconsciously make way for them, as though it was only right. Are these fellows human? Zhou carefully observed them and didn't discover the aura of dimensional creatures on them. They seemed to be humans. However, Zhou didn't hear their heartbeats. How could a human not have a heartbeat? Zhou realized that the arrival of the ghosts and White Snake wasn't as simple as a dimensional zone breaking. Old Zhou, what's wrong? When Li Xian saw that Zhou's expression wasn't right, he traced his gaze and saw Berserk Sword Immortal and company. Feng Qiuyan and Ming Xiu also walked over. Clearly, they also sensed that the 5 people were abnormal. Even the soldiers in charge of guarding the area unconsciously stepped aside and did not stop the 5 people. What's their background? Li Xian looked at Berserk Sword Immortal and company and asked Zhou with a suppressed voice. No idea. Zhou shook his head slightly. Li Xian still wanted to say something, but Crazed Sword Immortal and company had already approached. Who are you? Li Xian stared at them and shouted. Berserk Sword Immortal ignored Li Xian and stopped in front of Zhou. He looked at Zhou and said, I have good news and bad news for you. Which one do you want to hear first? Give me the good news. I don't like tragedies, Zhou said. I can help you penetrate the W-dimensional zone and ascend the magic cube ranking to obtain first place. Berserk Sword Immortal said seriously. Who do you think you are? Even the immortals of the League of Defender wouldn't dare to boast in front of us brothers. Li Xian curled his lips. So what if you're an immortal? As long as you are willing to cooperate with me, immortals can only bow their heads in front of you. Berserk Sword Immortal said. Do what you need to do. We don't have the time to listen to your nonsense. Li Xian naturally didn't believe it. Apart from Human Emperor, the strongest faction on Earth was the League of Defender. As for the Holy Land strength, no one knew how strong it was. What's the bad news? Zhou asked again. Berserk Sword Immortal said, the bad news is that you'll probably have to spend more time thinking about how to manage the Earth Federation in the future. That's interesting. How should I address you? Zhou narrowed his eyes and asked Berserk Sword Immortal. Although Berserk Sword Immortal didn't emit any aura and looked like an ordinary person, Zhou could sense an extremely dangerous aura from him. You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know what I can give you, Berserk Sword Immortal said. Li Xian was amused as he walked over and patted Berserk Sword Immortal on the shoulder. Brother, you sure know how to act. Didn't you ask who we are before coming? No one on Earth can boast like this in front of us brothers. Go do what you need to do. When the four immortals saw Li Xian pat Berserk Sword Immortal on the shoulder, they were immediately enraged. They were about to attack when Berserk Sword Immortal waved his hand to stop them. I know you're considered top figures in the Federation. If I don't produce something, I'm afraid I won't be able to convince you. Berserk Sword Immortal gestured to Painting Immortal. Painting Immortal came to a realization and walked in front of Zhou. He extended his hand to summon a brush and drew a circle on the ground. Standing in the circle, he looked at Zhou and said, I'll stand here without moving. You can use all your strength to see if you can injure me. Others might not understand it, but Zhou was somewhat surprised when he saw the circle drawn by Painting Immortal. The circle that the Painting Immortal had drawn was actually similar to his minor heavenly cycle-killing formation. It was a type of spatial cycle skill. However, the circle drawn by Painting Immortal was fixed. It borrowed the space of the land and was far less flexible than Zhou's small heavenly cycle-killing array. It could be said that the skill used by Painting Immortal was actually one level lower than Zhou's. Zhou, wasn't that companion beast of yours rather powerful? Let's see if it can injure me. Painting Immortal stood in the circle with his hands behind his back. He looked sage-like, as though he didn't think much of Zhou. Zhou obviously knew that a weapon like the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors was most afraid of such spatial cycling skills. Even if he released the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors, they would only circle around the circle and not injure Painting Immortal inside. Of course, Zhou was good at such skills, so it wasn't difficult to crack Painting Immortal's skill. Why? You don't dare? Painting Immortal provoked smugly when he saw Zhou remain motionless. Coach, a battle of this level isn't worth it for you to take action personally. Let me do it. Feng Qiuyan suddenly stood forward, hoping to request permission to fight. The immortals thought nothing of humans. Even Zhou only had value to them because he was born on Earth. Otherwise, they wouldn't even take a liking to Zhou. So why would they take a liking to Feng Qiuyan? Feng Qiuyan addressed Zhou as coach, so it was obvious that he was Zhou's student. How could Painting Immortal take a liking to him? Young man, this isn't child's play. It'll cost your life, Painting Immortal said coldly. Then give it a try. Zhou nodded in agreement when he saw the determination in Feng Qiuyan's eyes, as though he was very confident. Chapter 15:13. After receiving Zhou's approval, Feng Qiuyan turned and walked towards Painting Immortal. Painting Immortal was at the Hell grade. Although he could only barely produce strength at the Mortal grade due to possessing an ancient corpse, his ancient corpse body would be destroyed and he would be punished by Earth's rules. But no matter what, he was still at the Calamity grade. If Zhou Wen had gone up personally, he would have taken note of the might of the golden flood dragon scissors. However, Zhou Wen had actually let a student fight him. From Painting Immortal's point of view, this was an insult to him. If not for the fact that he still needed Zhou Wen, he would have already punished Zhou Wen to let him know how terrifying a Calamity Great Immortal was. Zhou Wen ignored what Painting Immortal was thinking. From the circle drawn by Painting Immortal, his strength wasn't stronger than Zhou Wen's. This was something Zhou Wen knew very well. Instead, Feng Qiuyan had taken the initiative to fight with such confidence. It surprised Zhou Wen. I previously gave Feng Qiuyan the coin with a minor heavenly cycle-killing array. He should have figured out some of it, right? If he can figure out the trick to it, he might be able to crack the circular space circle. Zhou Wen looked at Feng Qiuyan, wanting to see what he had figured out from the minor heavenly cycle-killing array. However, Zhou Wen didn't have much hope. He had only given Feng Qiuyan the coin for a short period of time. Even if Feng Qiuyan figured out something, it wouldn't be much. Feng Qiuyan stopped outside the circle with a saber in hand. He looked at Painting Immortal and said, "My saber is very fast. You have to be careful." Painting Immortal laughed when he heard that and said with some contempt, "Just slash. Even if you slash 1,000 times, you won't be able to touch a corner of my clothes, much less one slash." Feng Qiuyan had already warned him. Painting Immortal's carelessness had nothing to do with him, so he didn't say another word. He held his saber and stared at Painting Immortal in the circle. "Your aura isn't bad. I hope your saber isn't just for show." Painting Immortal didn't think much of Feng Qiuyan. Space circulation was a high-level skill. Even among the Calamity grades, there were not many who could master such a skill. Even for those with the space attribute, it was hard to say if they could master such a skill. How could it be broken by a human so easily? Feng Qiuyan didn't say a word. When his eyes moved, he drew the saber in his hand. Fast, unbelievably fast. Not to mention ordinary humans. Even the Painting Immortal's vision was shaken. The blade seemed to have disappeared from his line of sight. However, the painting deity still did not take it to heart. No matter how fast the saber was, it would be trapped in the circular space and could not hurt him. Such a fast saber. It's not easy for a Terra-grade human to master such a swift saber. I never expected Zhou Wen to have such a person by his side. Berserk Sword Immortal was somewhat surprised. However, he was more delighted. By controlling Zhou Wen and Feng Qiuyan, it would be of great help to the establishment of a new immortal faction. Cray Sword Immortal similarly didn't believe that Feng Qiuyan's saber could break through the circular space. "You can be faster." Painting Immortal was still mocking Feng Qiuyan, but before he finished speaking, his expression changed. The circle of golden light on the ground expanded, forming a strange, distorted space. It was as if there was a painting revolving around the Painting Immortal. Feng Qiuyan's saber slashed at the distorted painting as the saber beam sliced through it. It tore apart the distorted painting and slashed at the Painting Immortal's body without stopping. Painting Immortal felt that something was amiss as he quickly retreated, but he was still half a beat too slow. The clothes on his chest were sliced open by the saber, leaving a deep wound on his chest. If he hadn't reacted in time and retreated a distance, the saber would have sliced his body into two. How is this possible? The four immortals widened their eyes as they looked at Feng Qiuyan in disbelief. It was a circular space skill. It wasn't impossible to use some special ability to pass through it. However, to be able to split open the circular space with a saber, and it was even from a Terra-grade human, they almost thought they were dreaming. Even Berserk Sword Immortal looked at Feng Qiuyan in a daze, momentarily at a loss for words. Zhou Wen was also somewhat alarmed. From Feng Qiuyan's performance, he knew that Feng Qiuyan had almost comprehended his minor heavenly cycle-killing array and had even created a way to crack it. Of course, such a cracking method was very difficult to produce a good effect on the constantly changing minor heavenly cycle-killing array. However, the effect on the fixed circular space used by Painting Immortal looked very good. After bragging all day, it turns out that's all you have. Li Xian glanced at Painting Immortal with a faint smile, nearly making him find a hole to hide in. I'm sorry, coach. I've already tried my best, but I still failed to fully comprehend what you taught me. This saber strike was too poor. I've let you down. Feng Shuyan returned to Zhou Wan and said in shame. From Feng Shuyan's point of view, the circular space set up by Painting Immortal was much simpler than the minor heavenly cycle-killing array that Zhou Wan had gotten him to study. He had failed to crack it cleanly, and had even given Painting Immortal time to react. This was a huge mistake. You haven't practiced for long. It's a pass to be able to do this. Go back and practice more. Don't make the same mistake again. What else could Zhou Wan say? All he could do was tell him to practice well in the future. In any case, Zhou Wan really had nothing else to teach him. Feng Shuyan's learning ability was just too sick. You're using it poorly? Too little time to practice? Pass. You still need to practice more? Painting Immortal and company were somewhat dumbfounded when they heard that. If it wasn't for the fact that ancient corpses didn't have any expressions, his face would have long twitched and deformed. Berserk Sword Immortal frowned as he looked at Zhou Wan and Feng Shuyan. He thought to himself, this Zhou Wan seems a little different from the Zhou Wan in the information. It's really strange that a student of his has such a standard. Painting Immortal and company even suspected that Feng Shuyan wasn't a student taught by Zhou Wan, but Wang Mingyuan's disciple. Even if he was Wang Mingyuan's disciple, it was already shocking for him to have such a standard. However, from Feng Shuyan's attitude toward Zhou Wan, the respect and worship was definitely not faked. Everyone, the performance is over. If there's nothing else, go do whatever you need to do, Li Xian said with a smile. Painting Immortal and company looked at each other before finally looking at Berserk Sword Immortal. Their emotions were somewhat strange, especially Painting Immortal. His eyes were filled with shame and indignation. He was a Hellgrade expert, but he was nearly cleaved into two by a Terrorgrade human. This was a huge humiliation. Berserk Sword Immortal thought for a moment and gestured at Book Immortal. Painting Immortal had already lost, so it wasn't appropriate for him to take action. Furthermore, Berserk Sword Immortal could tell that Feng Shuyan was likely very knowledgeable about spatial circulation. With Painting Immortal's current strength, it probably wouldn't be of much use even if he forcefully attacked again while his abilities were restrained. Book Immortal took a step forward and came in front of Zhou Wan. I have a skill that I would like to consult you on, Your Excellency. At that moment, Book Immortal's attitude towards Zhou Wan was very different from before. He no longer had the condescending contempt from before. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.